All right. You see what's going on here. Audio says it's connected, but I'm not getting any music. There's always something, right, fam? Technology these days, is it working for us? Or are we working for it? Sometimes, I don't know. Let's try to reconnect. All right. Oh, maybe. Huh. Look at that. Spotify just stopped working. Cool. Easy fix. All right. Maybe there. Man, I can barely hear it. All right, there we go. All right. What do we have today? What are we going to do today? We've got our tea. We've got our coffee. We've got a big bottle of water. And we've got our minds. And we've got our voices. And we've got a ton of different choices. What shall we do? Friends, tell me, what would you like to discuss today? I always start this stream off with the... Sometimes it seems like it takes a... Uh-oh. Did my YouTube stream bomb again? No, it stopped. Let me make sure I connect to YouTube so I can see. Maybe I'll see a chat that comes into YouTube. History says I won't be so astute. But we're all about improvements here. So let's see if I can really multitask. Where shall we start? Feels like every time I get up on stream, I have this dream. I have this dream that I could give the perfect presentation, tell the perfect story, saying all the right things, asking all the right questions, eliminating what's really irrelevant to our sense, to our practical lives, to our sensibilities, to our sense of meaning. I have this dream that at some point in time it'll all come together. And this perfect narrative, well constructed, step by step, will lead to some sort of personal revelations within each and every individual. And those personal revelations will spread like memes on the internet. But unlike bad memes where they just distract us, they hijack our attentional systems and make us focus on irrelevant things like AI generated fruit that eats other fruit, AI cannibalistic fruit. I got this new recommendation on my YouTube, and it's this guy that's doing content. He's like a news channel for AI generated content and kind of takes, the AI at face value and reports on it. And there was a video. Cannibal fruit. Didn't see that coming. Which is kind of clever. It's got a good shtick to it. Haven't watched it, so I don't know what it's all about. But it seems like maybe AI generated cannibal fruit is more of a distraction. Although, who knows? Interesting thoughts come from the strangest places. We have to be open, right? Isn't that a key tenet here at the Joy of Thinking? Happy accidents. Let's accidentally attract strange, impossible thoughts. All right, so what is this perfectly constructed story? How does it begin? Let's think about it. I have a few ideas. So really the dream is it's really comes down to this idea between genius and madness. Whoops. There's a lot of people out there saying really astounding things, making crazy claims. I want to make a few crazy claims. And the first crazy claim that I want to make is that I think that humans right now have all of the information, all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom that we need to radically restructure and change society from one that we see has a lot of problems to one that has less problems, right? So building it's not the perfect society, right? Nothing in this world is perfect. But building an optimized society such that the health of all the living organisms and systems can be maximized. So my radical idea is that I think that humans collectively already have everything that we need. All the building blocks, all the theorems, all the theories, all the algorithms, all the technology to build a truly next level society, building a new game. So that's the first crazy claim. Now individually we know that we have very little of the information that we need for this grand design, but collectively I think we have it. Which means that the problem is really how do we integrate all this data? How do we share all this data? How do we communicate such that each one of our independent ideas can be used in a way that can give humanity kind of the super AI, right? The super AI version of having all the answers and helping us, nudging us in individuals in the right direction. So I have claimed before on this podcast that I have at least a lot of the pieces that go into the process of creating a very, very intelligent society, one that maximizes for the health and happiness of all individuals in it. And that process looks the same for us as individuals as it does for society as a whole. And I think we have to start with us as individuals. We have to go through this rigorous, painful process of becoming more enlightened, more aware, more flexible, more adaptable individuals. And then when enough of us go through that process, collectively we will self-organize and we will use that process that we used in our personal lives, apply it at scale to society at large in order to get to that more sort of homeostatic, more sort of unified, regenerative society that we all want to live in. And I have this idea that could I convince a single person? Can I convince a single person that this is true? I bet, and if I could bet that person $1, would they stick around and listen? Hey, Nitro. How's it going, my man? How you doing today? What are you up to? Tell me how your Friday is going and what you're thinking about. Starting off the stream because I have this idea that what humans need to do is we need to collectively get together and have a brainstorm and come up with the perfect story that contains all the information that's really relevant, really practical to our lives, all the key lessons and the truisms that we've built over thousands of years, right, from all the different societies. How do we collect all the good stuff and kind of how do we collect it all and divide it into different categories? What's relevant and what is irrelevant? Bet $1 that I can tell a good story. So this is kind of the dream. This is still a story and work in progress. This is kind of like the Jack Black. This isn't the greatest song in the world. This is a tribute. I couldn't remember the greatest song in the world, but this is a tribute to the greatest song in the world. So we just imagine, using the powers of our imagination, we just imagine that there is such a story out there. If you had such a story, then you could bet someone $1. It's really inconsequential how much it is. Could be as little as a quarter. Just anything, right? I bet you $1 that this story will change your life. And the lives of everyone, writ large. So you get somebody invested in hearing the story for very, very little, right? I bet you $1. I can change your world. I can give you all the knowledge that you need, and most of it you already know to be true. So really what I'm doing is I'm just reminding you, I'm priming your memory system in the right way to make new connections between all of these true things that you already know to be true in different narrow aspects of your life. And I'm reminding you of all those true things that you already know, and I'm putting it together in kind of a formula, a matrix, an interconnected puzzle. So this is kind of the dream. Once I find this story, now, so far it's just theoretical. The story is theoretical. I'm working on it right now, and I think I've got a lot of the pieces in place. But if you could convince one person that you could bet them $1 that if they listen to the whole story, after that person got done with the story, they'd be like, okay, I agree. That was worth $1, right? That was such a good story. That was definitely worth $1. Now, here's the thing. If you could do that for one person, that's at least some evidence that it was a really good story, right? And if you disseminated that story on social media, and instead of just being like a personal bet with $1, you just created a website with like a crowdsource type of funding system. There's all these new platforms right now where there's communities where you get a community together, and that community can fund that business idea or whatever, or that community. So if you could spread this story, this mythical meta-narrative, and you could convince 1 million people, right, that to take that bet, that $1 bet, if you put all of those $1 into that community structure, you'd have seed funding, right? This is old. This is crowdsourcing. We have the technology to do this. And if you can convince 10 million people, then wow, now you really have something. So in theory, if we had the right story, we could use technology and crowdsourcing to seed a company. Now, what would that company actually do? What would that company do? And how would it be structured? Okay, so that's kind of one aspect, right? Is just the idea that, and all you need to believe for this to be possible is the idea of viral memes, right? We have plenty of examples of documentary films that have a massive impact for a very short period of time, then people just forget about them, right? There was the Social Network documentary that kind of alerted many people to the problematic aspects of modern social media companies, how they're farming us for our attention, and how fake news tends to spread a lot faster than, actually truthful news. And we've got viral memes, got viral videos, right? We've got baby shark video, right? That's the most watched video. I think it used to be the most watched video on YouTube for a while. It's like over 4 billion or something views, 10 billion views, maybe something like that. So we have examples of viral videos and viral documentaries. And we have examples of crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe or what's the big one? The big one, the big crowdfunding platform. The name escapes me right now. So we already have these technologies. So now we need that story. We need that story of all the things that you need, and nothing that you don't. And if you had that, and you could convince a critical mass of people, then you could start a movement. Non-locally, in virtual space, you could start a movement of people that are fed up and they want to try something new. All right, where do we start? This is a quote from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Or Alice in Wonderland. I forget which one it is, but Alice says, "I can't believe that," said Alice. "Can't you?" the Queen said in a pitying tone. "Try again. Draw a long breath and shut your eyes." Alice laughed. "There's no use trying," she said. "One can't believe impossible things." "I dare say you haven't had that much practice," said the Queen. "When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." I love this quote. Impossible things. We start with emptying our mind of what we know to be true. And from that position of knowing nothing, we are open to learning anything. So we have all these stories about the universe. Universe is this incredible thing, right? Unbelievably, unfathomably immense, complex, mysterious. And it turns out, what we can see of the universe has something like 10 to the 24th stars. Our galaxy alone has 100 to 400 billion stars in it. It's enormous. The numbers there just boggles the mind. And when you zoom down just to life on Earth, you see there's a whole universe of life just here on Earth. So forget the vast expanses of unexplored space. Just look at Earth. And you find that the number of organisms in Earth's ecosystem even outnumbers the scale of stars that we think we can count or observe in the universe, right? So 10 to the 30th organisms, including 1 trillion bacteria alone, most of which are undiscovered. So we don't have to look to the stars to find vast complexity, mind-boggling scale of different systems. We can just look around us. And then if you zoom in further to a single brain, right? You zoom into one of these things in one of the 8 billion humans. Just this system alone. We've all got one in our heads. You can see that the scale and the numbers and the complexity just in this one organ, in each and every one of us, has incredible complexity. 200, well, about 186 to 100 billion neurons, and about as many support glial cells that also have these signaling features, right? So you got 200 billion neurons, and the thing about brains is that these are not independent cells. They're all connected. So you got something like a quadrillion connections between all of these cells and all this complicated signaling and information processing going on. So we quite literally have a universe. And by the way, the number of brain cells, is about the same order of magnitude as the number of stars in our own galaxy. It's pretty humbling. So we're embedded in nested universes, the scale and complexity of which we're mostly blind to. We can't see inside of our heads. It's kind of a black box. And because we can't see inside of our heads, we should be kind of humble about it, right? So we kind of have this we all kind of agree that the universe is complex, that the earth is complex, that the world is complex, that we ourselves are complex. And we kind of we onboarded this idea, right? Of certain ideas that the earth revolves around the sun. There's things like solar systems. The universe is vast, possibly infinite. But this was not always the case. It's only the case because we have modern technology like, the James Webb Space Telescope, and we've got things like the scanning electron microscope, and we've got, fMRI, and all of these tools that enhance our ability to take measurements about life. But let's think back to our history. Confucius said, "Study the past if you would define the future." What does that mean? Study the past if you would define the future. Who we are right now is a consequence of who we were in the past. The life that we see today on this earth, and the systems, all evolved from past systems. And we need to understand that history in order to have the right context for what is possible going into the future. So I like to remind myself of the fact that for a long time in history, humans, we only had our five senses. We didn't have telescopes. We didn't have microscopes. We certainly didn't have fMRIs. And so all that we knew, all of our theories were based on just our five senses. And when you have that limited ability, those limited perceptions, you come up with theories that just map your experiences, right? The sun goes around the earth. It's obvious. So in the past, the earth was the center of everything. Women and slaves were property. You could fit all the animals on a single ark, in case of a major flood. Brains, they weren't these complex, vast universes that did a bunch of information processing. They were just organs to cool the blood. Right? That was Aristotle's infamous account of what the brain was. And we had this idea of humors. Blood, black, yellow bile, and phlegm, which sort of accounted for our theory about health and disease, not microbes. So, and people that claimed otherwise were imprisoned, like Galileo. They were forced to drink hemlock poison, like Socrates, or they got burned at the stake. So proposing radical new theories has been historically a very treacherous path to take if you really wanted to come up with something. Now I found another example. This man named Giordano Bruno, who came up with who supported the idea of heliocentrism, right? The fact the Earth goes around the sun. He proposed that the universe was infinite, did not have a center at all. He also thought that other stars were like other suns that probably had solar systems around them. And he also had this kind of very, very the thing where the church doesn't like it. Heretical. He had this heretical belief that God and the universe is one and the same thing. And he believed in reincarnation. And the church burned him at the stake. Seems pretty unnecessary, right? Why do we have to burn people to the stake simply for having different ideas than we do? Certainty. All for the sake of certainty. So Socrates once says, awareness of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. So I guess that's where this story starts. It's acknowledging the vast complexity of the universe at all scales, at the scale of the universe at large, the scale of the Earth and all the ecosystems and organisms that populate it, and the scale of our bodies and brains. We have trillions of bacteria alone living in our guts, and there's probably more. I think there's more bacteria and stuff, microbes, or as many microbes living on us and within us as cells in our body. It's pretty amazing. So the universe is infinitely complex. We are infinitely complex. And what we have to measure that infinite complexity is pretty, let's just say it's pretty sparse. It's not very good, right? We're limited by our five senses. And it turns out that our five senses, we think about them as kind of primary in the best way to sort of know and probe the world around us. But if we just look at the animal kingdom, there's at least twice as many senses out there that we don't actually utilize. So if we look at animal perception, birds have an ability to navigate using the Earth's magnetic field called magnetoreception. They have these little cells in their beak that are sensitive to changing electromagnetic fields, and they can use that to navigate. Sharks can detect prey that is buried under the sand with these electroreceptors. They can detect electrical fields. Have you some way as an individual, sorry, Nitro, can you rephrase that? I'm having trouble parsing that sentence. Take humanity along as well. A single philosophy that can unite us. Yes, that's what I'm proposing. Right now I'm calling it the meta myth. It's kind of it's like a 30,000 view or 20,000 foot view. It's not gonna tell us exactly how to unify quantum field theory and general relativity. It's not going to tell us exactly what we can do as individuals to save our marriage in this really particular complex world social network that we've built. It's not going to tell us all the details. But it's like an abstract painting where you can see all the major forms, right? And you can use that as kind of a blurry map by which to navigate. And that's still theoretical, right? my big claim is that we have all the knowledge, all the wisdom to actually compile this story and get enough people on board to build it. That's my claim. It's still just a theory, right? Someone has to, in fact, do it. Well, that's what I'm trying to do, man. So it's going to take some time, right? So I have to start at the beginning. We have to admit that what we can study is very limited. So that's what I'm getting into right now, right? Just the humility that we need. So if we compare our five senses to all the other types of sensory apparatus in the animal kingdom, we can see that we've only got about half of the main types of sensory systems. Sharks sense electrical fields. Bees see ultraviolet light. Mosquitoes use thermal vision to like find the right warm-blooded animals that they can suck on. Bats and dolphins echolocate, right, using sonar. And snakes have this interesting thing called a veromonasal organ called Jacobson's organ, which they actually use. It's in addition to smell. So they have nostrils and they have olfaction, but they also do this thing with their tongue where they grab sort of these molecules in the air, pheromones, non-chemical molecules, and they bring them in, and they, so it's down here. The tongue flicks in the air, it picks up these pheromones, and then they bring it inside, and they put it into this little cavity here called Jacobson's organ, and they can use that to signal. So the point is that humans have a very small subset of sensory systems by which to know the world. So we can say maybe we have about half. Now, if we just focus on any one of those sensory systems, how good, like how much detail is that giving us? Well, if we just look at light, for example, our eyes see in the visible light spectrum, which is actually an infinitesimal fraction. It's 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? Frequencies that we can detect using, high-powered technologies. So that's a tiny fraction. Similarly, sound, if you add up all the frequencies that we can detect using technology, there's probably more that we can't detect using technology, but what we can hear is only 0.02% of the information out there. So not only do we only have about half of the amount of sort of sensory organs, but if you look at any one sensory organ, it has very, very low resolution. Very, very tiny sliver of information that we're getting. So this makes us even more humble, right? Holy shit. Sure, share your philosophy, Nitro Gold. Do you want to jump on Discord and talk to me in person? It'll probably be easier to communicate. Are you on my Discord? So I'm going to jump in the stream room in case you do. If not, no worries. You can share your theories over text. All right. Did I get any comments on YouTube? No. All right. So you can jump on Discord or you can just type in chat. And I'll continue with this exploration of human sensory apparatus. Okay. So not only do we have only about half of the known sense organs, the senses that we have only detect a tiny, tiny sliver of information. But it gets even worse, because there's all this studies in cognitive science about how the brain gets tricked. Right? There's all these different visual illusions that show us that our brain is really, it's trying to help us out. It's trying to help us make sense of the world. It's making predictions based on our experience. So in this case, in the first case here, when we're perceiving, when we're looking at the world, there's all these shadows, right? Now these shadows, because they're cast here, our brain is like, okay, well that I have to modify my understanding of what that actual information is in order to make better sense of the world. So you get weird things where here in square A and here in square B, these are identical, right? These are actually an identical color. But because of the way that the shadow is, right, one looks darker than the other, right? It's because of, contrast. And then here, in this rotating mask example, it looks like, even though we know the mask should be concave when it rotates this way, it looks convex still. And what our brain does, it just automatically applies a shift in lighting, right, from top down to bottom up, because we don't actually have any experience of inverted concave faces. Every face that we have ever seen in our life, except, after once we invented Halloween and masks, then, we started having the experience of like concave faces, but still our brains are like deeply wired to expect convex faces. And if you look at complex things like this, you can see that there's motion here, or you perceive motion, when it's really just a static image. This is not a GIF. This is a static image. And this happens in real life too, right? If you look at the wheels on a car in videos, sometimes you see the wheels, they look like they start rotating backwards in the opposite direction, right? A subtle reminder that these visual illusions are actually embedded in our reality. So I found a bunch of real life visual illusions that show, even in parsing our complex information in our social environments, oftentimes we see the wrong thing, right? We see a lady with a big butt here instead of that being the back of a chair. We see this guy here randomly grabbing another man's woman. There's the dress that broke the internet, right? There's this great picture of the ship that looks like it's floating, right? It's actually the sea behind it, but it looks like the sky. There's this interesting one right here where it looks like this man, his arms are like extending and wrapping around this entire crowd for whatever reason, right? It's like he's like Mr. Plastic Man. And the dress that broke the internet, big debate. Is this dress blue and black, or is it white and gold? Turns out it was just a simple, the way that you perceive the dress depends on how your brain expects the lighting to be in that picture. And you can flip back and forth, actually. Some people can, at least, see it both ways. So Nitro Gold is sharing something. Let's talk about this. Nitro Gold says everything originally came from nothing. This phenomenon means that other phenomena must exist. To keep this place from going to nothing by some terrible phenomena, we must use our willpower to dream up a world that can survive and even thrive. After all, our willpower is just another phenomenon, and our imagination exists as matter in the universe. understand, or should I rephrase this with ChatGPT? I understand it, and I think that it actually doesn't matter whether or not the universe came from nothing or it is infinite and there was always something, right? Even if it was just kind of like an empty Higgs field, right? A null state. So it really doesn't matter whether the universe came from something or came from nothing. I do agree with your other statements there that I don't think that we really have a choice in the matter. I don't think it'll ever go back to nothing. But I do agree with your statement that what we do need to do is use our power of our imagination and dreams for the future to continue to create worlds that are better suited for us. And I think dreams are a very, very powerful and underestimated way for us to accomplish these lofty goals. I actually think that that reality that we experience around us is metaphorically a collective lucid dream, right? That we are collectively giving sort of reality to what we see around us. That without observers and without, bugs, insects, observer can be any number of things. It doesn't have to be humans. But we kind of, in measuring the world, we are actually co-creating it, right? And I think there is, because of properties like quantum entanglement and the idea of non-locality, right? I think there is a way in which all of us as humans are communicating on a subconscious level. This is a theory of, like, morphic resonance is the most well-known theory of this by Rupert Sheldrake. But there have been lots of different societies in the past that have believed in collective unconscious or some form of it, right? There's Idra's net in Hindu belief system, where everything is connected sort of on a deep level, and that there's this sharing of similar information systems with one another in a kind of resonant way, like two tuning forks that can resonate. Most of the time, we're too distracted by our sort of local consciousness and I call it our local weather phenomenon. Most of the time, the information that we're getting is most of the time that collective or that connection to the collective unconscious is getting drowned out by our local weather patterns. The things that we're currently focused on, the things in our life that we see, like that is much more prominent and important, usually, than the diffuse information about other individuals that might be in different places all around us. But I think that it's when we dream that we have more access to, we start to let some of that information trickle in. So we know entanglement is a thing in quantum physics. This is not some crazy idea anymore. All quantum physicists agree that entanglement is a real property that is measurable. It's just become so diffuse, right? After generations and generations and evolution spanning billions of years, right? That entanglement is sort of become rather diffuse. You see, by dreaming up a world, we can make it perfect and not step on one another's toes. It's bad karma. Yeah, I like that, Nitro Gold. When we share our dreams with one another too, we can help to synchronize our dreams. So I think that if we were capable of telling this great story and proving that it was capable, maybe that's just the first, maybe the idea of itself is just, maybe the meta mythology is a dream that everyone would want to have, right? The meta mythology, it's this fictional universe that we're creating. It's the dream that everyone wants to have. And just like an amazing piece of literature or an amazing movie that moves us emotionally, we need to have a story that aligns us, right? So that when we go to sleep at night, we have this far off dream, right? It's remote still. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of effort, and it's going to take a lot of reorganizing and structuring and time and patience and energy to actually realize that dream. But if all of us have that sort of mental picture, even if it's kind of blurry and vague, we all share a kind of map, right? So a dream is like a map showing us where it's possible to go. And if we had that map and we could make it viral, then we would converge towards it. Our dreams would start to synchronize. They'd start to align. So I totally agree with that, even though I don't know. I don't know if the universe came from nothing. To me, I think that it probably has always existed. But I don't know, like our practical, our phrases like nothingness, they might not really apply at different scales of the universe, Maybe nothingness is just, maybe that's just the wrong term. Or maybe we're just splitting hairs when we say nothingness is identical to a perfectly homogeneous state of the universe, right? That somehow started to fluctuate or vibrate in a single way. A dream world we can meet in and talk about to sync. Yeah, so we have to talk about this dream. Talk about the dream. What do we actually want? We get so caught up in talking about things that we don't like. We get so caught up talking about things that we're scared of. Our fears, and this is kind of like, this goes back to our evolutionary origin. We have all this built-in hardware that tells us that when we perceive danger, that should be the thing that we need to focus on. It just makes sense, right? That's just good survival strategy. When your house is burning down, doesn't really matter whether or not you have enough cream cheese to put on your avocado toast. Right? Like you got to reprioritize. Danger has to take precedent. If you die in the process, then nothing else matters. So this kind of necessary evolutionarily granted or developed hardware is part of our psychology. And in cognitive science, they call it the negativity bias. And it's why social media algorithms, why they naturally promote more sort of outrage content, right? Content where there's just tribes dunking on one another, people that are upset about the state of the world are outraged, and they're venting their emotions, right? We pay more attention to that, naturally. We can't help it. It's like the crash on the side of the road when you're driving by. Everyone naturally rubbernecks. It's an instinct. And so because we pay more attention to that, algorithms are like, well, this is how we boost engagement, right? We promote the things that are more engaging. And that tends to be the things that make us scared and angry. So part of the problem is that right now, we might know intellectually that the universe is practically infinite, that the world has more life and living systems on it than stars in the visible universe, that our brains are universes unto themselves, with probably around 200 billion signaling cells like neurons and glial cells, with a quadrillion connections between them. It generates this very realistic simulation of the world. Our brain is a simulation machine. It's a computer that simulates. Our conscious experience is a simulation of the world. It's not the world itself. It's just a simulation. So because it's this simulation, that's when it leads to, that's why it's possible for you to get these visual illusions, right? Because our brain is simulating reality, we can get these visual illusions where we get tricked. Obviously, this dress is either blue and black or it's white and gold. It can't be both, right? Well, it can be both if you think about the brain as just simulating the environment and it's trying to give a best guess as to what is out there, which is actually modified by things like lighting conditions. So under different lighting, both of these interpretations could be considered accurate. So a lot of people think that, well, okay, yeah, sure, the brain is simulating our conscious experience, and that means that we don't actually see the world as it is. We see basically the bare minimum that we need to actually survive within it. But, you know, all these little kind of tricks of the mind, like that doesn't have any practical significance for us. But that's where they're wrong. Because you see, if you just think about the amount of complexity, we're rarely wrong about the color of, say, an apple. We're rarely wrong about whether or not there's a chair in front of us or a river or simple objects, right? But as you ratchet up the complexity, we are getting less information about the overall state of the system, right? Which means we're more and more likely to be biased in our interpretation of that system. And as we said, the human brain has 200 billion around 200 billion signaling cells. That is about the order of magnitude of complexity of stars in our galaxy. So every person around us is way more complex than we think. And people feel that they are very, very good at reading other people. They just know exactly who someone is, right? People that give interviews for jobs, they really feel like they always pick the best candidate for the job. We just feel that way. We can't help but feel that we are making accurate determinations about reality around us, even though what we're really trying to understand are enormously complex systems that we should feel entirely incapable of understanding barely at all, right? We barely understand ourselves. And we experience ourselves, we experience our behavior every day, over and over again. We see it, we have habits, we have trains of thoughts that we think about over and over again. Other people are just as complex as us, but somehow our experience of them is such that we are confident that we can filter out most of them, say, you know, just put them in buckets and sort them out and then ignore most of them. So we think we're good at reading emotions, which, you know, relatively, maybe we are relatively good at reading emotions. We seem to do it fairly successfully a lot of the time. But even simple things like emotions can lead us astray. So this is a example of Karina Williams, and if you take away this picture here and you just focus on the facial expression, right? She looks livid, just pissed, right? Looks like she wants to break something. But if you have more context, you're like, oh, she just won the Wembley Open or something, right? This is elation. This is not anger. So the point is that the exact same visual stimulus, the correct interpretation depends on a lot of context. And oftentimes it depends on more context that is given away in, you know, the mannerisms of the person or their posture, right? In this picture, in this example, we have enough context to be like, okay, well, she's really happy. But most of the time, our thoughts are kind of stuck inside of our head, and our faces don't really always easily betray or reveal the inner thoughts that we're having. Like, I could be having thoughts about, you know, foot fetishes right now, and you wouldn't know it. And a lot of the times, people are just thinking, they're having experiences, right? Nothing is showing on their face. We're playing this game of poker constantly with one another, where we're only really revealing sort of the emotions that just, they're so strong that they happen automatically, right? We're not really revealing all of the subtle things that we're thinking in every moment, right? We're really just revealing the big ones when there's danger, or you really have pride or proud, or, you know, the really sort of obvious emotions. We're good at seeing those, but everything else, and when you think about it, just think about what kinds of emotions populate our ordinary experience. Most of the time it's just whatever, you know? So what percentage of emotions that we display on a daily basis are easily interpretable by other people? Probably a small amount, maybe 5%. Probably not big, maybe less. So, really the problem that we have as humans is that scientifically, intellectually, we know other humans are these extraordinarily complex things, and we would require a full understanding of their entire history, their childhood, what experiences they had, right? That time that they went to the beach and almost drowned or got stuck in a riptide, to explain their phobia of water, right? We would have to understand their distant ancestors. We'd have to understand their full genome to understand how many dopamine receptors, right, they have in certain parts of their brain. We would have to have a full readout of that person to really understand who they are. And yet our lived experience, by design, hides all that information from us so that we can easily categorize them into either friend or foe, right? Useful or unuseful. And we are convinced of those feelings of certainty. So not having enough humility is, I think, sort of the root of the problem, or one of the major roots of the problem. And that's called, so that view that people believe confidently that their experiences of the world is a close mapping to the world itself, that idea is called naive realism. And by default, we're all naive realists. It's only really when you dig in deep and start studying cognitive science, how the brain works, right? The idea that it's all simulation, and you start putting together the pieces of, holy shit, my visual systems that I think are really, really 4K, right? They're actually only seeing a tiny sliver, 0.0035% of all light out in the universe. Our experience is we don't think about information that we don't have, right? What is contained in the simulation is all the information we have. We don't know what we don't know. And so it feels like this very, very high definition experience. And so we're confident. We're confident about our experience. We're confident that it represents, maps onto reality accurately, but it doesn't. It's terribly inadequate for that. Counter Clockwork Games. My man. How are you doing? Humility? Ha. I'm the humblest person around, baby. What do you got to say about that? We're talking about a story. A fictional story. I've made a couple claims, Counter Clockwork. I've claimed that humanity right now has all the information, all the wisdom, all the technology that it needs to radically reorganize society, to make it more regenerative, to maximize for the health, happiness, and creativity of its individuals. We have all the information that we need. But the problem is that it's distributed. It's distributed across millions or billions of people. And we're just really bad at communicating. We're just terrible at communicating. And language is this really ambiguous tool, right, that specifies very little. It's hard to communicate, and we get tripped up by all of these fears, cognitive illusions, all of these deep-seated sort of malware that's sort of been programmed into us. So I think the first step is trying to identify the root of the problem, which is that I started this talk by talking about just the scale and immensity of the universe itself, right? So we really need to... The core problem is that we need to get young again. We need to start thinking like children. And I love this quote from Alice in Wonderland. The Queen says, "When I was your age, I sometimes believed in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." So we need to kind of erase the drawing board, erase the whiteboard, and forget about all the things that we think that we know and start thinking like children again. And being open to impossible things. Because most people would say what you're trying to do with, and people tell me this all the time, what you're saying is impossible. There's no way that you could tell a single story that could change everyone in a way where everyone would be more willing to cooperate and communicate, right? Like people are they're just inherently greedy, and you can't change greed. It's there, right? Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think we can do a fair bit of nudging, and I think that evolution tells us that the only constant in nature is change, and that we as humans are changing and evolving, even though it doesn't seem like it all the time. Clown says you don't need a giant book on someone's life to know why they are scared of heights or why a song makes them cry. People share certain feelings and memories. That is why a song from someone who has never met can feel like it is about your own life. Musicians use those shared bits, moments, sounds, and images to connect. You do not have to know every detail of someone's past to make that connection. Absolutely, absolutely correct. I totally 100% agree with that. Which is why what I'm talking about might seem paradoxical to people because I'm both saying that look at the scale of the universe. The visible universe has something like 10 to the 24th stars in it. Astronomical. Mind-boggling. And then if you just zoom into Earth and all of the organisms, microbes, all the systems on Earth, if you look at all the living systems on Earth, including bacteria, you see a number, you find like 10 to the 30th number of organisms just on Earth, which is even larger than the number of visible stars in the entire universe. And then you zoom in further to just a single human brain, to just a single human being, and maybe even just a brain, because I like brains, and I know more numbers with brains. And you've got 86 billion neurons and as many glial cells with about a quadrillion connections. And you find this massive complexity. So we are an entire universe unto ourselves. And there's as many, bacteria and microbes on and inside of our body as there are human cells. So the scale of complexity is incredible. We only know a tiny fraction of that. We can understand their fear of water. We can't understand their detailed history, their genetics, right? We don't understand all their childhood upbringing, all their phobias, all their fears. We can't understand the complex way that their brain is making certain decisions, like whether or not they want chocolate or vanilla ice cream. And we as individuals, we don't even know. We don't understand that. We don't know why we picked Earl Grey tea over peach mango. I don't know. Why did I pick that? I have no idea. My brain is a black box. It's too complex to understand. So, with all this complexity, what hope can we have? What hope can we have of actually doing anything to make anything better, right? So it seems like there's paradox. You're saying that there's all this complexity out there. Humans are by evolutionary necessity can't manage all that complexity. So what hope can we have of making predictions about the future when you're saying that we can't even understand ourselves and we can't understand other people? Well, different scales. You don't need all of the details for certain things. So that is why, exactly as Clowns has said, people can resonate with one another with very little information, right? And oftentimes, I would add that their belief that they are resonating accurately with other people when they're writing a song often is not the case, right? Like if you ask someone to interpret a song, they're like, this song spoke to me. This was just, I know exactly what it said. You go and you look at the artist's original interpretation of their own music, it's like it wasn't even close, man. Like there was this song I remember, and A Perfect Circle sang this song. It's called, it goes, don't fret, don't fret, something, I'm here. Step away from the window, go back to sleep. I thought it was about, I thought it was a sociopolitical critique on tyrannical systems, political systems. It was just about a parent's desire to protect their children from the world around them. Right? I was so sure, oh my God, this is so obvious, this is, right? So, our beliefs that we have accurately interpreted the world around us, again, that's part of the problem, is that it feels like there's a pattern there. From everything that we can see, everything with our experience, our framework for understanding that feels like it's sufficient, but often it's not. So there is, but I don't think it's hopeless. It's not hopeless because any one individual has trouble finding out the truth. But we have this amazing ability. Here, I've got a picture. We have this amazing ability to communicate. This is, by the way, what gave Homo sapiens an advantage over our Neanderthals, was our ability to coordinate and our ability to socialize in groups. So what's the solution to this overbearing complexity out in the world, in the universe? It's communication, which we just have to get a little bit better at. And we get better at communication by admitting that we're not already very good and wanting to get better. So this is kind of the fable or a parable of a bunch of blind men trying to figure out what the hell an elephant is. And that's why I like to call this the elephant in the room, right? This is like the one thing that we really, really, really need to understand as a species, is that basically all of us are blind functionally to complexity. And at the scale of social organizations, the complexity is so massively overwhelming, we have trouble understanding what a single individual is likely to do in the future. And you multiply that by 8 billion people, right? With all these different motivations, a bunch of personal histories, and the complexity is just mind-boggling. Which is why we need to somehow create a new method for understanding and parsing that complexity. And it's basically this process, right? It's cross-referencing. So you get a bunch of blind men feeling on different parts of an elephant, and each one of them thinks that it's using a different template, right? One's feeling the leg, and it's like it's a tree. One's feeling the side of it, it's a wall. One's feeling its tail, it's a rope. One's feeling a tusk, it's a spear. And it's only by cross-referencing all of this data that you can have a complete picture of what it actually is. So this is our job as society today. How do we technologically engage in this process of cross-referencing to figure out what the hell reality actually is and how we make the most of it? We need a way to do that. Right now, we have all the tools to do it. Right now, market forces are preventing that system from naturally emerging or evolving, because they're always looking for short-term profits. But when this system emerges, everybody wins, and we don't need to worry about who's making the most money, right? Like, once this system emerges, money is going to be a thing of the past. I mean, we'll still have currency because, it's necessary for the economy, but people won't be so focused on it. They won't see it as the be-all, end-all goal, right? It'll be like just a tool that we use every day, just like cars. Like, we'll use it, but we won't be like, oh my God, my car is everything to me. It'll just be a tool that we use. We won't be addicted to trying to accumulate more of it than anyone else. Clown says a lot of that information is just noise. When you look at any system, some parts are necessary to evaluate it. Musicians know how to cut out the noise and focus on pieces that matter for connection. Scientists do the same thing when they study systems. And as a physicist, I do it when I look at how energy is distributed. Yeah, exactly, Clowns. Exactly. So it's not hopeless, even though the amount of information that we could look at is practically infinite. Most of it's unnecessary to making certain predictions. And absolutely, that's why there's hope. Yeah, very well said. So this is as far as I've gotten in my slides so far. But the overall idea is, so a great way to also think about this is that this is what happens This process of the blind man and the elephant trying to figure out what it is, this is exactly the same process that biological systems use. You can see it, our eyes are a great example. So we have stereoscopic vision, and we have this thing called depth perception that we actually get for free just by offsetting the same perceptual organ. Duplicating and offsetting the same perceptual organ, now you can engage in triangulation, right? You've got two angles, and you get the third angle for free. This is amazing, right? You get new information just by cross-referencing from two of your senses that are offset. Now, when the brain is trying to compute our lived experience, in reality, it is doing this not just across the two eyes, it's doing it across all five senses. It's cross-referencing all of the data coming in through all of our senses, and it's constructing, the best fit to that data. And so that's sort of our goal going forward. That's the next step in social evolution, is designing a sort of world brain, or a brain. It'll be at different scales, but that engages in this kind of thing, and that uses people instead of pressure sensors on your skin or hair cells on your ear to hear sound waves, or receptors on your retina and your eye. You apply people as the sensory sort of inputs, and then you cross-reference all of that sensory input in this sort of global brain. And we can instantiate that using technology like smartphones, 5G, and blockchain technology, and smart contracts. So all of the pieces are there. We just, right now, we don't have that vision. Not many of us can see it. In fact, it doesn't seem like anyone is really. There's a few people, Carl Friston, who had the free energy principle. He's been saying kind of similar things. He's talking about an ecosystem of both human and AI sensors that go out in the world, collect data, and feed into this sort of sense-making network. Clown says, just because someone listens to a song and takes a different meaning from what the artist intended does not mean they do not understand it. Most music, especially popular music, is made so people can relate to it in many different ways. That is why it becomes popular. You can see yourself in a song and make your own connections. You don't need every little detail. Yeah, I agree with that, Clowns. What I was saying is that often people think that the message that they're getting out of it was the artist's intended message, which is clearly the case a lot of the time. Now, there could be a deeper sort of intersection of meaning that is embedded in the quality of the sound, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, is that they understand it sort of on a bodily, emotional level. And there's probably a deeper intersection, even that is shared by both of those two different interpretations of the different individuals, right? So I agree, and I think that's why poetry and music is so great. Clown says, if you're going to use the blind men and the elephant story, remember that the problem in the story is not that the elephant cannot be understood. The problem is that each person only looks at one small part and assumes it's the whole truth. The solution is to step back, share perspectives, and see the whole elephant. Just because some people do not know how to do that does not mean it's impossible. 100%. Absolutely right. Counter Clockwork says, but if we don't focus on money, how will people know that they are better than others? How will we know that? I think the goal is to, so you can get, Clockwork, I appreciate you saying this tongue-in-cheek. But I'm going to answer it seriously. I'm going to answer the question seriously, because there is this natural desire to evaluate, right? And part of the problem with social media is that it causes us to be much more evaluative, to try to or comparative. We try to compare ourselves to others. And when we're all just curating our Facebook feeds and filling them up with the happiest moments of our lives, we get a very unbalanced picture of other people's lives. And there's sort of mixture of joy, sadness, negative and positive emotions. And when we only see people reaching milestones, right? Getting promotions, going on vacations, when that's all we see, it makes us feel very, very insignificant. It makes our lives feel less meaningful. And when we feel inadequate about ourselves, I think that's when we start to engage in these sort of psychological we have this defensive reaction, and we seek to elevate ourselves above other people when we have the opportunity. When we feel this deep insecurity with our ability to produce, create, succeed, whatever our metric is, when we have those feelings of inadequacy, we find opportunities to elevate ourselves above others. I have a great story about this. So Clowns is a song request, so we'll get to that in a second. Let me tell this anecdote. When I was at UC Berkeley, I had to pay my housing and costs and all that kind of stuff by working part-time at a restaurant, and I was a waiter. And actually, it doesn't matter. This was actually before I was at UC Berkeley. This was at a different junior college. This was actually in LA. I think this was at the Olive Garden, actually. My first waiting job was at the Olive Garden. When you're here, you're family. That's what we need. We need to go to the Olive Garden and have a big brainstorming session at the Olive Garden, because they've got free breadsticks. It's amazing. And endless salad bowls. So anyways, I was at the Olive Garden, and there was a couple guys. They looked like, I don't know, businessmen, right? They were dressed in fancy suits. And they were talking, and I was just taking their order, and the two guys, they were kind of sparring with one another. I forget exactly what was said, but as I was taking down their order, this one dude said something it was kind of a snide jab at the other guy, right? He said something. It just made the other guy feel diminished in some mild way. And as I was just writing down the order, and he made this joke, and so I kind of chuckled, right? I just kind of smiled and chuckled. And the one guy looked at me, and at the time, I didn't interpret much about the look, but he just kind of looked at me. And then I walked off, and as I brought them their dinner, he was like, "Come here, I want to show you something." He had this list of things on his phone. Some of it was just random stuff like E equals MC squared, or Pythagorean theorem, right? Just a bunch of I don't know, things that a college educated person would have probably come across in the course of their lives, right? So this person had basically created their own IQ test on their phone, and he was showing it to me, and he was just tapping between different screens. He's like, "What's this? What's this? What's this?" And I actually answered almost all of them, But he did it really fast, and then when I gave an answer, he would give the same answer but more detailed as a correction to what I was saying. And I was like, what the hell is going on? This is the weirdest shit. Like, this guy has this intelligence test that he randomly gives to people that he thinks he's better than, and then administers the test in such a way where he can assert his dominance over them because, I mean, obviously he formulated the test, so clearly he's going to know all the answers. And I'm just like, holy shit. All because his friend, right, said some snide remark, like put him down just a tiny bit, and I laughed. I grinned at the wrong time, right? That was a trip, actually. So that's like, hey, what's up, Funky Fox? How are you doing? We're about to do a song request right now. I was just telling a little anecdote about my time serving at the Olive Garden, and someone whose pride had been hurt by a third party, not myself. He was kind of like the butt of a joke, and I was just taking their order, but I kind of chuckled because it was a funny joke that the other person told. And this person was just like, I need retribution. I need to show that waiter how much dumber than he is than me. And so we brought out this like random IQ test that he had created just so that he could assert his dominance over other people by making them feel small in comparison. So anyways, counterclockwork. Back to your point, when we feel diminished by others, right, we just pass it along. We pass those negative feelings along to other people. Sometimes it's difficult for people to laugh at themselves, especially when so many other people are doing it. You're okay? You think you had it better, though. What about you? Funky Fox. I love your name, by the way. My wife loves foxes. She, at one point in time, did streams, and she streamed games, and her name was Two Fox. And I made her this logo design. It was like two halves, kind of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There was a dark fox, like a night fox, and then like a sun fox. A moon fox and a sun fox. And so, foxes are great. So love your name. Glad that you like getting funky with it, too, because we like the funk. Gotta have that funk. We need that funk. Right, clowns? You've had it better, though. Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. Sometimes things are just kind of ho-hum. Sometimes things are really dreadful and down in the dumps. The one thing we can always look forward to is change. So if you're feeling particularly down, just realize that over time these feelings will fluctuate, and you will likely experience more periods that bring you joy and happiness. All right. You want change your song request? Okay. We'll do that one instead. Let's do that one instead. Let me pause Spotify here. Ooh, funk. Funky Fox. You ready?
He walks where the lamps fill the dirty floor. Feet a rhythm, but his head says no. Mouth full of charm and a grin gone stale. Love in a bottle with the busted seal. Eyes scan alleys like they owe him gold. Heart all pawn, but he plays it bold. Pockets of poems he never wrote. Each step once she smiled like the sky went soft, then ripped his cords and walked right off. She was silk, now they all feel torn. Sips their smoke, but it don't get warm. Each kiss dry like a stage goodbye. They chase his fire, but he won't reply. Every smile looks but not grown. He's still locked in a voice long gone. No more saints, no more tries. Just a rhythm strung to I. To please, he nods, he grins, he lets him spin, but the touch don't sink, don't bruise his skin. He's too far gone to fake delight, calls it fate, but he sleeps uptight. Walked too many times in the wrong goodbyes, left too fast just to feel alive. Something's right, but they won't die. He still hums her name through a borrowed high. She was gold, now they just glint. They play their part, but the notes don't hit. Each line lands like a song half true. He ain't cold, just burned clear through. Every hug feels factory made. He's still caught in the echo she played. No more saints, no more tries. Just a rhythm strung to I.
Ooh. Yeah. Tasty.
She broke him quiet, broke him loud, left his chords in a feedback cloud. He don't pray, but he still looks back to the night she snapped his final track. He ain't jaded, he's just tuned wrong. Ain't no fix when the ache runs long. He's been kissed by the best and worst, but none cut deep like the way she cursed. He talks in riddles, sleeps in past, rides new faces till the moment cracks. Won't say her name, but the shape still haunts. Each love he leaves ain't the one he wants. His hands don't shake, but they don't reach. Just drum old ghosts he'll never teach. She was heat, not the kind that glows. Left him lit where the silence grows. Now he walks like a riff unresolved, lost in beats that no one called. Every look's a rerun scene. He's still wired to the way she leaned. No more saints, no more tries. Just a rhythm strung to I.
Strung to wine. Ooh, tasty. Very tasty. So Funky Fox, hope you got down with that. Hope that brightened your mid Friday today. Thanks so much, Clowns. That song is by our very own Clowns and Holloweird, who's a very good friend of the stream and is an amazing musician, so you can check him out on SoundCloud and Spotify. If you like funk, he does a lot of funk. He does everything, so no matter what you like, you'll find something. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. It's Saturday, though. Oh, it's Saturday? Ah. Darn it. Where are you, Funky Fox? Where are you? You must be on the other side of the world. I apologize if you told me this before. I'm going to take a quick break. I've got to deliver some of this tea from my body into the toilet. In Norway. Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Think of some questions, things you want to talk about, things on the news, things on your mind, stories that you like to tell, burning questions that you have about the brain or cognitive science or whatever. I'll be right back, everyone.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back. I'm back. Norway's awesome. What do you think about Norway right now? What do you do, Funky Fox? Are you a college student? Are you a teenager? Are you a professional in a field? Are you a curious mind, longing for deep conversations that you're unable to find in your local community because we've all been confined to this virtual world where our friend networks are all online? Can we rewind the tape? Is there something more to find? Buried treasure? Something that's impossible to scientifically measure? Whatever. So open invitation. Clockwork, if you're still there, I'm on Discord right now. If you want to, I haven't talked to you for a while, so that would be fun to get you in chat if you're still there and you have time. I know you've got a lot of busy things going on, so you're constantly multitasking and that, but if you've got time, open invitation. Funky Fox, I don't know if you're part of the Discord here. I can, for some reason, I keep updating my Discord, but I put the freaking invite as permanent, but it never seems to do it, so I'll put that in chat. You're a teen if you're unsure if you're normal or something is wrong, or something, so that's fun. What I bet. So I can't say, I don't know anything about you. what do you feel could be potential red flags in terms of self-evaluation? What are the red flags that you're feeling? What are you curious about? What are you like, is my brain okay? Am I different than everyone else? Am I somehow strange, weird, insane? Well, there's a fine line between genius and insanity, just remember that. So often, people with different minds, different experiences of the world, contribute amazing things to society. Like clowns, for example, has a very, very unique mind. And he's used it, tuned it, trained it, honed it, crafted it into this amazing processor that generates incredibly beautiful and profound music. And so maybe you have a mind like that. Maybe you have a mind that is still in the process of deciding how to refine itself in order to maximize your potential for happiness, deep, meaningful connections. I think a lot of people... So one thing to note is that the complexity of the human brain is such that it allows for tremendous variability in our experiences of the world. And it is that variability, when we collectively get together and share information, that gives our species the strength that no other animal species has, right? The ability to communicate and share our experiences at a degree of resolution that is unmatched. So that's our superpower as a species, is having different views of the world, the blind men and the elephant again, and being able to sit around a campfire or a dinner or a Olive Garden, endless salad and pasta banquet with unlimited breadsticks and share our different views of the world. And that makes us very, very strong and resilient. Funky Fox says, I fake my emotions whenever I'm around people because I don't feel empathy and don't pull myself into other people's shoes, but over time I've found out how to fake it. That's not that atypical. You're probably just on, so there's a autism Asperger's spectrum, right? Where it's just a very large umbrella spectrum that we categorize people who have difficulty interpreting emotions of other people at a high resolution. But there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think in some ways that's a superpower. Not being so acutely in tune with other people's emotions mean you're not being so acutely in tune with their negative emotions, right? And because of this, a lot of people that have Asperger's or on the autism spectrum, they don't get set off by little things, right? Like they don't get super angry when someone, makes some kind of underhanded comment, right? That would otherwise be interpreted by quote-unquote normal people as being a slight that needed retribution, right? So I've found that people on the Asperger's autism spectrum, they're some of the people that I have the best conversations with because they don't have emotional meltdowns easily. You can talk about anything that a lot of people, would be like, they would have these really strong emotional reactions to and just break down and run away from the conversation or fight instead of just sharing ideas openly. So that is not necessarily a problem. And I know quite a few people that, you get better, I think, over time, right? The more that you deal with individuals, you'll start picking it up. It's just going to be at a slower pace than other individuals. Because you're not as sensitive to the amount of information that's available, so your learning rate is just somewhat slower or more gradual. But you I think most people, at least the people that I've talked to, experience this ongoing learning curve where they become more and more attuned to people get better at reading their emotions. But again, that's in some cases that is a superpower, right? Not getting set off by negative feelings of other people around you and not feeling like when someone's just a downer in the room. For people like me, oh my gosh, that person, right? That quote unquote toxic person, that just pulls me. It just pulls me down. It drags me down, right? Like it's palpable that negative sort of energy, aura, whatever you want to call it. But for other people, it's not so bad. And if you don't respond to that sort of negative energy and you just treat them like everything's fine, you communicate with them like, no big deal. We're just two people having a cup of tea together. You can bring that other person up. You can get them to, just by acting like everything's fine, they question their own feelings. They're like, well, oh, maybe my negative feelings aren't actually accurate. Maybe everything is fine. They question themselves and they're like, this person's acting naturally, normally, like we're just friends here. So that actually lifts them up, right? To at least a baseline. Maybe not to happiness, elation, but maybe it helps them. Diagnosed with autism. But yeah, I just feel like I'm a freak because the only person I opened up to looked at me with fear, and that made me fake the emotions, but it feels like I don't know who I am because I've done it for so long, and that just kind of hurt, you know? Yeah, well, you're still at a very young age. So your friend network, right? Your friend network is probably comprised of a bunch of individuals who don't know much about psychology, who don't know much about themselves, who are more emotional than you, because teenagers they're just very emotional, right? Being a teenager for most people is like this emotional roller coaster ride. And so if you bring up something that they don't understand, that they can't communicate with, they don't have a proper framework for understanding because they're uneducated or they're just young and naive, then yeah, that's bound to happen. But I wouldn't get too upset about that, right? It's going to take a while for you to millions and millions and millions and millions of different interactions with different individuals. It just takes practice. So I think you'll be there. Just means you're human. It was a rejection and now you mask. That is a normal response. Yeah, I think Clowns is right on that. We all do that to some degree, even people that are not on the autism Asperger's spectrum. We do I said earlier on the stream, it's funny how it seems to come full circle. I talked about our interactions with people as being this kind of massive game of poker that we're all playing. And usually we don't share our inner feelings for most of the time, right? Because we feel like, it's just going to be a burden to other people around me or society. I'm not going to talk about, the fact that what's something embarrassing that I did recently. I don't know, I pissed the bed like about 6 months. I guess it was about 6 months ago. I actually peed the bed. I'm 43 years old. And I woke up one morning and I had peed the bed. I'm not going to share, and I felt pretty bad about that. Pretty bad. Did I go out and share that with everyone around me? Well, actually I did kind of, yeah, because now I see, because now I've gotten to a point where I think that it's more fun to make fun of yourself and make people laugh, right, than be too concerned about what other people are thinking about me. But, you know, if that had happened 20 years earlier, I'm not going to share that. Slightly depressing and, you know, embarrassing fact about my life. So, you know, things happen to people all the time. We're constantly going out in public and putting on this poker face, right? Just a poker face. It's a mask. We're masking our emotions. And it's probably a good thing that we do that for the most part, right? Society would be even more chaotic and confusing if all of us were just wearing our heart on our sleeve at all times of the day, and each one of us was privy to the inner emotional turmoil going on inside of our brains. That just seems like, man, we can barely manage what we've got here, right? Like the limited access to other people's inner feelings. We can barely manage that. It's like probably a good thing that we're all playing poker. Thunder Dude. Lelia Johnson. What's up, Thunder Dude? What's up, Lelia? We're talking about masking emotions. Funky Fox. He or she, Funky Fox. I'm not sure which. But it's just, you know, I was wondering, like, okay, I've been diagnosed with autism. It seems like I have trouble understanding the emotions of other people and really perspective taking and putting myself in their shoes. Is that something I should be concerned about? And from my perspective, no, that's nothing you should be concerned about. In certain cases, I think it's a superpower not getting triggered by other people's negative emotions so much and just being open to communicating and not having to battle with this constant undercurrent of emotional sort of stuff that's happening and kind of humans get distracted, overly distracted by our emotions, I think. We get, it's kind of like riptide. Our emotions sort of take us out into the ocean. And we feel like we're kind of, we have to exert all this energy just to stay afloat. Has anyone been stuck in a riptide before? It's terrifying. I went to the beach, I was probably about 14 or something, and I was actually a decent swimmer too. I got stuck in a riptide, and I was out there treading water, and I tried swimming first in, didn't get anywhere, just kept going further and further out. And then I tried going under the waves. I'd read somewhere that maybe you could go under the current. Nope, that didn't work. I tried swimming under the current, just got pulled farther and farther back. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. I think it was a follow. Yeah. Thanks for the follow. It's not a superpower to laugh at a funeral. Yeah. Big Dogan. What's up, Big Dogan? How are you doing today? If anyone has any questions for me, I know there's some new people in the stream. This is the joy of thinking. This is just kind of like, just think of this as a brainstorm. I'm not an expert in any one particular field. I'm just a curious mind. I have a bachelor's degree in cognitive science, which, you know, is like neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, linguistics, little bit of computer science, some other stuff peppered in there. So it's like a multidisciplinary field. But I haven't studied in the academic world for about 16 years now. But I've remained curious about all things. So I can talk about pretty much anything. So anything that you want to talk about, fair game. Just ask me in chat. If I had to point to an expertise, it's like cognitive biases. Right? It's the kind of the rules of thumb or like the built-in algorithms that our mind uses to perceive and understand reality that sometimes gets us into trouble. So if you have any questions like that, I could answer in detail. If you have general questions about God, about the universe, about time, about free will, about AI, all those things are on the table. Big Dogan says, I love men, 69. Cool, man. I love men too. I'm a man. Clowns is a man. I love clowns. There's a lot of men in here I love. Lelia asks, what do you do for a living? Lelia, what do I do for a living? I'm a full-time creative thinker, armchair philosopher, and I am looking for a path towards a more regenerative, sustainable society for human beings. I'm trying to be an influencer, not having a whole lot of success because the things that I talk about, I think, they're not really, it's not video games and it's not how to make money. So it's been a little slow. So I'm still working up to it, but I'm trying to be a philosophical influencer. So I'm kind of retired, actually. So I don't have a 9-to-5 job anymore. I have enough savings to basically do whatever I want. And this is what I do. I just have interesting thoughts. I scour the internet for cool things. And I search for good conversations with people like you. So, Laylee, you're a graphic artist? Get out of town. I was a graphic designer for about 20 years. I did 3D designs and graphic design. I worked for a company in the automotive marketing industry on the creative team, doing mostly graphic design. So I still have an $80 subscription to the Adobe Suite monthly. And I just get so angry that I'm still paying this monthly fee, even though basically the functions of the software that I actually use have been the same for about 12 years. I don't use any of the new features, really. The AI integration is like, it has its uses. I've used it here and there, but... So, cool. Graphic designer in the house. Shout out to graphic designers everywhere. It's a cool job. A lot of people don't really realize how difficult it is to make a good design. It's very tough skill. Not a lot of people have the skill. Like you have to be very sort of visual oriented. It's a parallel processing where you have to rearrange all the different elements in a very, very specific way. It's kind of like a Rubik's Cube, right? You can't just focus on any one area of the design or be super confident that one thing has to be in that one spot. You have to be open to moving things around. Everything is connected in a design. In that space, you have to find this sort of optimal configuration for visual elements to not overwhelm the viewer with unnecessary information. You have to balance, right? Different parts, different messaging. So I was thinking, what if I enhance your channel in your design? What do you think? What do you mean enhance? Elaborate. Funky Fox has a question about therapy. Sure, go ahead. Oh, Thunder Dude had a comment earlier. Intelligence, experience versus innate ability. All right. Let me see if I can... answer this. Intelligence. Experience versus innate ability. So this is a good thing to kind of think about. You can think about innate ability as basically like processor speed, right? So the computer analogy, it's not perfect, but if you think about the human brain as a computer, because of the variability in the long development period, right? The human brain develops over about 25 years is when we're fully sort of wired up and we stop changing radically, when we lose massive amounts of plasticity in our mid-20s. You can think about innate ability as just the raw processing power of the machine. How many do you have? An 8-core Pentium? What are we at now? Is it Pentium 5 processors now? Do you have an 8-core or Pentium, or do you have a 16-core AMD? Right. So the amount of information, the sort of bandwidth that you have, and how much onboard RAM do you have? So you can think about there's variation along this spectrum of just the hardware. But then experience gives us room to learn, right? So the experience aspect you could think about as this ever-evolving software where we can constantly download new programs onto our sort of general purpose machine, and we can get good at many, many different skills. So me, for example, I don't have the highest processor out there. But because I'm very curious, over the long run, my curiosity has allowed me to download, right, a lot of additional sort of wisdom onto the machine. So, and having a super processor, it depends on the environment, whether or not that's actually a good trait, right? Like you can imagine if you have an IQ of 180 like clowns here, or 86 or something like that, if you were stuck in a environment that was relatively deprived, like maybe you're out in the Himalayas with a bunch of Buddhist monks that are just interested in meditating, and you're this young person with this huge amount of processing power, and you're gathering all this information, you're like, I'm just bored here. I'm just bored. This sucks. And then you're like, I'm just going to run away. And then you run away and you die of starvation or something. It's like that was not an adaptable feature. So having, just massive sort of brain compute power might not be like a great thing in all environments. So Funky Fox asks, so let me follow up with Thunder Dude here real quick, and then I'll get to Funky Fox. This suggests that brains can have as vast of a difference in processing power between them as between computers. That's just not true. Yeah, so the analogy only goes so far. It's just an analogy. So yeah, I agree that you don't want to, if you look at all human brains, there is a huge variety. There is a huge variety, but it might not be as large as, say, a Game Boy from the 1980s to a whatever the top of the line Pentium processor is today, right? Or system. So it might not have that range of variability in terms of what they accomplish, but there still is. Everything's relative, right? So there still is a pretty vast range. And this is the crucial point. Many people assign values to whether or not, you've got the 16-core processor or you just got a single-core processor, right? They'll assign values, and they'll say this one's better than that one. Usually people do that because it reflects on themselves well, right? They have those values because it paints themselves in the best light. But here, I say, forget all about that. I think that every person has inherent value. we all have these incredibly complex, beautiful things called brains that simulate our lived experience. We are all intelligent in our own right, and we should seek to benefit by sharing that intelligence, and just saying that all people have value, right? Regardless of the small differences, small or big differences in their brains. Lelia says, what if I make you a Twitch full layout? Lelia, to be honest, I don't really need it. I'm sorry. You can get my Discord if you want to talk about this, but I'm unlikely to be able to hire you. Now, if you have a cool project that you want to do, and you really need some money, let me know what your project is, and maybe I can fund some of your projects for you. Right? I can give you something over what's it called? The money sharing app or whatever. So Funky Fox says, can I, as a teen, get a therapist? Because I know I should seek help, but when I mentioned it to my parents, they believe I don't need it because I'm happy, quote unquote. Healthcare included therapy is free to an extent. Like what if I make... Oh, sorry. Funky Fox, yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I don't know who really benefits from therapy. I don't know if you're a person that would really, really benefit. Again, it's hard because we only just met. We've only been talking for a little bit, and it's over chat, so it's not really private, so you can't tell me everything that you want to. I would just say, yeah, if you think you would benefit from it, and it's free, then why not give it a shot? And, just give your parents, depending on what your parents need, maybe give them a spreadsheet of cost-benefit analysis, do a little presentation, do a song and dance, or make one of those really disturbing portraits like Van Gogh did when he cut his own ear off or something to get their attention. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Maybe don't do that. But I think your parents will, especially if you have the healthcare. Yeah, why not? Give it a shot. It couldn't hurt, right? So yeah, so maybe you could, I don't know, do you like drawing? I don't know if this is something that, I don't know if visual things are, I don't know the population on that spectrum, if they're less likely to be sort of visually oriented. That might be the case. Some people on that spectrum don't experience music as vividly as others. Do you have another way that you tend to express yourself other than language? Do you like dancing or anything? You do an interpretive dance for them, where you're like, this is how I feel. And you can do a very, some other way to communicate. And you can just say, sure, I seem like fine most of the time, but I'd really like to explore this. I think they'll come around to it, especially if you have health insurance. All right, I will put my Discord in chat again. Oh, whoops. I put it in the wrong place. Here we go. There we go. So Thunderdude says a simple test, two brains starting from the same memories. If given a test, will they perform differently? Two brains starting from the same memories. If given a test, will they perform differently? I think they likely would, yes. Oh, Funky Fox, you like drawing? Good. Oh, you feel like you'd have to lie and fake the emotions that make them even more worried than you actually feel? Just ask them, just say, I'd like to, I don't know if I would benefit from this, but I'd like to give it a shot. And ask them to explain what potential downsides there could possibly be from giving it a shot. And if, like I expect, they fail to produce any significant lists of downsides, then I think you could convince them, just using logic, hopefully, that there could be potential benefits and there's very little risk. So why not? So Thunder Dudes, there have been thought experiments like this, Thunder Dude. I think one of them's called it, maybe it's just like the twin, maybe it's like a variation on the twin Earth thought experiment, right? Where you've got two parallel worlds. You could also think about identical twins separated at birth, but that's not identical brains, really. So you could think about a twin Earth scenario where there's Earth and then there's twin Earth. If you have a twin on twin Earth and all of the variables in both of those two universes are identical, then you would probably expect some kind of convergence, right? The brains would reach the same conclusion. However, that is an unrealistic scenario. So if you had two brains, say if you were able to imagine that we had some sort of brain replicator, brain duplicating machine, where you get your head scan and you could create a perfect copy of the structural dynamics, all of the neurons, all the connections in that brain, and you were to take that and you were to put it in, give it a transplant into a body system that was also, I guess you'd have to clone the whole system. I guess this gets to the point, though, which is that those brains are connected to the local environment, which is our bodies, right? They're connected to all the sense receptors that we have. So unless you then clone the body of that brain, you definitely would have enough variation where your choices would start to diverge very quickly. And then you would have to create some kind of lab-like scenario where the environments were identical also. So it's really an impossible experiment to do. But what we know because of things like chaos theory, right, is that based on very, very tiny fluctuations in initial conditions, basically the systems start to diverge really, really rapidly, right? So in the sort of that two brains test, they will always perform differently in any practical scenario, right? You could come up with philosophical thought experiments where you could say, imagine all the conditions are identical, but you could never create an experiment with that. There would never, because every environment would be affecting those two environments that you try to set up for those two brains. They would have interference effects with one another, right? So just being to the right, just having one brain to the right of that left brain, right? You would have interference effects. And we know that the brain has this electromagnetic field around it as well. And so even if you had two brains, right, there could be interference effects just by their sort of electromagnetic fields in proximity to one another. And so you could think about extending those systems to the entire environment. There's always going to be, everything's sort of connected. So there's always going to be different signals, different noise, different information that those two brains are getting, which can, via chaos theory, be amplified into making radically different choices. For practical purposes, you have identical twins who grow and converge along similar paths. So we're talking relatively here. Funky Fox says, I tried that, but they just say I wouldn't need it because I'm clearly happy, aka my masking, and therapy would interfere with school. I don't know, Funky Fox, just keep trying. Just keep trying, right? Persistence. The squeaky, what's that proverb? The squeaky wheel gets oiled. Just keep bugging about them. Eventually, they're going to get tired of you bothering them, and they're going to give in, and it's going to be fine. Thunderdude says, what I think is intelligence is used as a justification for social inequities. It rewards cultural capital such as linguistic proficiency or abstract reasoning skills gained through privileged education and socioeconomic environments aligned with elite norms rather than any innate cognitive superiority. Thunderdude, I think that is often used as a justification for social inequities. Absolutely. 100%. Funky Fox, they say you're confused because you have autism? Well, they blame everything on the autism, and that's bullcrap. Yeah, that's, I don't know. I don't want to strawman your parents' arguments because I haven't talked to them. So I'm not going to talk smack about your parents. But I would say that if that is indeed what they're doing, that they're blaming autism and telling you that your desire for therapy is a confusion because of this condition that you have, then that's just bogus. Yeah, that's not a good argument. Lelia, why did that Discord link not work? Let me try again. Otherwise, I'll add you. Let's try this again. Since cognition relies on recombining experiences, labeling intelligence as a fixed trait enacts symbolic violence. It is a problematic, this is called essentialism, essentialist thinking. When you think that certain traits are fixed properties of systems, rather than seeing them as just particular expressions to a particular situation, right? Like, yeah, people do this all the time. Is it violence? I think that metaphor, although it seems to be intuitive, is not helpful in trying to reform some of these ideas. If you think that it's violence, then if you interpret it as violence, I don't know. Let me think about this a little bit, because I see what you're saying, and to a certain degree, I agree with you. But I don't think it's a helpful way of framing the problem for us as individuals, because then we feel we tend to get stuck in sort of a victim mentality, and that doesn't help with our motivation, right? And we get stuck on just pointing our finger at other people and saying, you are doing this to me, you did this to me, you're oppressing me, you're making me this way. And when you start trying to externalize everything, right, and you blame everything on everyone around you, now it might be true what you're saying, but trying to if you're trying to push back against a system that you dislike, that's going to be usually less effective for finding personal success than focusing on what you actually have control of yourself. So, although I kind of, I tend to agree with you, I think that maybe the framing it as violence is not helpful from our perspective, because it can put us into this victim mentality, which is ultimately demotivating and usually doesn't serve us. Thunderdude says, labeling those with less cultural capital as deficient while wielding symbolic power to legitimize social hierarchies as natural. Zeracles something? Okay. All right. I'm not a Discord power user, so I don't even know where to actually search for you. Here, maybe it's up here. In the search bar with the magnifying glass. Should be. Oh, there you are. All right. I added you. Are social hierarchies natural? If you look at our ancestors, there are social pecking orders in many social species which seem to have a hierarchical nature. So hierarchies do exist in nature. They're in some sense natural, but it doesn't necessarily justify what we see around us today. What we see around us today is not just the consequence of hierarchy. It's a lot of things that's going on. But I do agree that society having this radical hierarchical structure is less intelligent, right? I think we need more of a network structure, because that's what our brain uses. And there's local hierarchies within the brain, but there's also this radical sense of democracy, and right, and each cell, each neuron is getting input from a different part of the body, and then each neuron is sending a signal like a vote. And our brain is sort of cross-referencing all those different votes to come up with something that we ought to do with ourselves. So the problem is not necessarily that hierarchies exist. The problem is that if the power is all concentrated within individuals or a small group of individuals, those individuals, because they have all these biases, right, are not good decision makers, right? They're making decisions that empower themselves and a small percentage of the population instead of making decisions that benefit the entire society. Right now, we don't see ourselves as a single organism, right? We see ourselves as like a bunch of individuals in perpetual zero-sum competition with one another. But society right now, I think that's where we're going, is we have to have this sort of consciousness expansion across a massive amount of the population, such that we can start conceptualizing our role within society as having this sort of superorganismic structure. And in the same way that you would not seek to harm any aspect of your body unnecessarily, society should see that there are parts of its body that are diseased, maybe not diseased, but are decaying, experiencing entropy, and it should, right, take actions in order to help that part of the body regenerate, give it more resources, nutrients that it needs to regenerate. So we just need to reframe how we think about society and our place in it. And I think that's going to take a lot of pushback from grassroots activism, because the systems, at least in most parts of the world, especially here in the US, they're not evolving towards that direction without pushback on our part. Funky Fox says, I've asked them for about a year now, and I've already gone through enough without therapy or someone to talk to. So yeah, 2020 to 2023 equals social anxiety, 22 to 24 depression, 2025 autism and insomnia. So I've totally been so happy the last years. I'm sorry you've been going through that, Funky Fox. All I would say is that I've been going through many different phases of anxiety, depression, just bummed out states. I don't think that any of these states in and of themselves is necessarily cause for concern. I've always kind of been able to ride out that sort of the peaks and troughs of that experience, of that roller coaster. And I'm confident that even when I experience local points of depression, I'm going to be able to get out of that. But there's a lot of people, tons of people, not just on the autism spectrum, that feel that depression, that anxiety, all the stuff you're going through. So if it's any consolation, you're not alone. Even quote unquote normal people that haven't been diagnosed with anything experience this. It's just part of life. You can't have the highs without the lows, and vice versa. Thunderdude says, I borrowed Pierre Bourdieu's concept of symbolic violence. Example. Lelia says, I dropped you a message. Kindly check it after you get free. No problem, Lelia. Thunderdude says, example, in education, schools may present middle-class cultural norms as the right way to speak, behave, and think. Students from other backgrounds who fail to match these norms might be seen as less capable and may even see themselves in that way. I definitely agree with I agree with the idea. My small disagreement comes with the label itself, and this is just arguing semantics. But I think that violence is overused when it is referring to information. Now, I guess you could say that it's systematic violence, and maybe I would agree with that. Like, it's a kind of systematic violence. It's not violent in the way that it's not violent in the way that, like, taking an aluminum baseball bat and hitting someone on the knee is violent. But it's like a didn't see, don't care to think about kind of violence, right? So it's not maybe that's where I think there would be a better term used. Like, a lot of the systematic violence that you're talking about is more of an apathy, right? It's like, you're not important to me. I don't know about you. Or I see you as I can brush you aside. I can say that you're lesser, you're less deserving, and thus I can just ignore you. Like, I don't care whether or not you have what you need to help you succeed. Which, it's subtle, right? But there is a difference in sort of direct violence and just blindness or disinterest, I guess. You see what I'm saying? It's subtle. And again, mostly I totally agree with you. Example. Oh yeah, I read that. All right. Here's another example of why I think the framing of a lot of people that use like things like toxic people, toxic workplace. I have the same problem with the label toxic because it suffers from the same belief in essentialism as the people that are falsely using that to judge sort of human beings' value in terms of intellect, right? We talked about this earlier. You brought up the idea that people use this metric of IQ or their own metrics to measure value of human individuals, and that's wrong to do, right? When people apply the label toxic to environments or other personalities, they're saying that there is this feature, right? There's this quality about this person or this environment that is unchangeable, right? It's just, they're stuck with it. It's a property of that system. It could be, I'm willing to grant that in certain cases, that's probably, more or less correct, right? Like it's toxic for, I don't know, 99% of people that are in that environment, in the same way that if you went to Chernobyl, right? The nuclear fallout would probably cause problems for a lot of people. But it also doesn't mean that people are toxic in all situations, right? So it's unhelpful to label an individual toxic. They might be toxic, they might have poor behavioral choices in a specific environment because they've built up these habits and these problematic ways that they're viewing the world and other people that lead them to make the same mistakes over and over again. So they may be sort of quote unquote toxic in that environment, but completely non-toxic, right? When they're dealing with family members or when they're out, singing karaoke or something else like that. So again, we have to be careful about the labels that we apply. So it's just, it's a warning. And all of these they're metaphors, right? Like the idea that a workplace is toxic or that a person is toxic, that's a metaphor. And metaphors they're only partially true. It's a metaphor because it's not literal, right? It's thinking about one thing in terms of another that we're more familiar with. Funky Fox says, I think I should at least try to get some sleep, even though I really got bad insomnia, but I'll try at least, I guess. Goodbye. It was nice talking to someone tonight. It was great talking to you, Funky Fox. I hope that you get better sleep. I don't know if you're still there, but I know my wife takes melatonin that helps her sleep. I don't know if you tried that. I don't know if you've tried any sort of meditation practices where you focus on breathing. Like there's one meditation practice where you can practice breathing in through one nostril and out the other, and then in that nostril and out the other. I forget what kind of meditation exercise that is, but sometimes I do that when my mind is just spinning and spinning. Sleep is important, so if you're not getting good sleep, that has a lot of knock-on effects on a lot of other aspects of your health. So definitely, maybe you could confront your parents with that, saying I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping, and look, I just used ChatGPT to give me a list of all the problems, or the consequences of not getting proper sleep, and then you can say to your parents, look, I'm not sleeping properly. These are all the things that are problematic with not sleeping properly. I want to talk to a therapist about the possibility about insomnia. And maybe that would be a new way to get their attention. I don't know if you're still there or not, but. So Thunderdude says it's a symbolic power that enacts a symbolic violence. The ability to shape how people see the world and themselves. Because this process feels natural or common sense, people rarely perceive it as violence. Yeah, I think that it's fair. I think it's a fair choice of words, Thunderdude. I just wanted to point out that there are other ways that you could label that might be a little bit more generalizable or maybe a little bit more refined. So I think that overall the argument holds. I think it's a decent way to make sense of it. Maybe a practical way to make sense of it, because if more people see it as a problem, then maybe there would be more of a push to try to resolve it. So, I don't know, this reminds me about the debate between, during the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King was very carefully choosing his message and talking about how the process had to be a nonviolent one. The process of getting reform and changes in society. The message had to be more about love. And there were other people within the party that were like, why would we love people that don't love us back? Why would we show that respect to people that don't respect us? And they wanted to use the messaging Black Power instead of, I'm not sure what King's overall message was, but they really liked the sort of slogan Black Power, right? And King was kind of on the fence. He was like, we do want empowerment, but that might be interpreted by others as a threat, right? Which obviously it was. And there was a lot of blowback against this. I mean, not that there couldn't have been otherwise, but. So it reminds me of kind of this debate, right? There's this people that are very strongly aligned in a need to make changes, but had subtle disagreements in how to communicate, what kind of messaging could bring about those changes more effectively. So that's kind of what this reminds me of. Because you have to understand also that most people who are benefiting from the system, right, in their world model, in their worldview, they are not doing anything wrong, right? They're just doing what seems natural, normal, to themselves. They don't really perceive that the choices that they make writ large across society are having all these downstream negative consequences, are creating pockets of instability or tension or violence in other parts of the country. They're too far downstream from those causal chains to actually see that. I call this our cognitive horizon. We all live in this bubble where we can only see the causal impact of our actions up to a certain point around us, right? And it's fairly small. Another way to say this is myopia. So we have this cognitive horizon, or I also like to call it complexity blindness. Because of this blindness, the people within those little bubbles, they experience themselves as moral actors. And so if you hit them with this this idea that they're causing direct violence to other people by their actions, they're just going to flat out deny it. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? I go to church, I pay my taxes, I am a contributing member to society. I do a lot of complex work in engineering, right? They're going to be like, your argument does not make my life make sense at all. Like there's no room for actually getting them to modify their behaviors, their lifestyles. You create this automatic animosity between people, right? When you can't connect to them in their own experience of the world. So a lot of people, it's not that they're immoral, and it's not that they're seeking to intentionally do harm to others. It's just because of this cognitive horizon that we all live in these little bubbles. We don't see the downstream effects of our actions, and we don't experience ourselves as doing anything wrong. So that's the real challenge, is how do you get people to start to, right, experience, how do you get people to, first of all, believe that they could be doing things that harm other people, even though it doesn't seem like it, right? It's like we have to somehow get people to admit that the things that we do, if we're not thinking about it, if we're just accepting it because it's a cultural norm that's been passed down through, through years and years and years of conditioning in a particular society, if we don't ever challenge that, then, we just end up falling into those same traps again. All right. What else you got, Thunder Dude? Good talk, man. Good ideas. Anyone else still in chat? Is Clowns there? Clockwork, are you out there? New ideas, new thoughts. I got a whole nother hour. We got plenty of time. Thunder Dude says, while the internet has undeniably broadened access to culture creation and visibility, reducing the monopoly of traditional gatekeepers, it has not eliminated symbolic violence. It has transformed it. Yeah, totally. There are major gatekeepers on the internet right now. Major gatekeepers, right? Google, Facebook, YouTube, X, right? All of these platforms are major sort of filters, major gatekeepers for the content that is online. And a lot of the stuff that gets elevated there is the wrong kind of stuff, right? It's the arguments, it's the division, it's all the hateful, the bad stuff. It's all the ways in which we communicate poorly with one another that get elevated. All the perceptions of direct violence, symbolic violence against one another that drives us apart and drives us insane. Yeah, it has transformed it. It has not eliminated it. So we kind of need like a new sort of network. We kind of need to reinvent the internet. We need to reinvent social networks, right? When we reinvent the internet as a social network, where we incentivize pro-social behavior, and that system is like, it's part of a DAO, right? Like a decentralized autonomous organization instead of a corporate hierarchy that is just in it to maximize profits. As soon as humanity figures out how to do that, then what you're worried about and what I'm worried about, that's like the solution to it, right? It's building a brain. It's building a new network where everything's transparent and the rules are constantly being updated through this distributed network of a bunch of nodes and intelligent people sending signals and voting on how the rules ought to be updated, or how things are working. So yeah, once we figure out how to build a global brain, then we will end this sort of symbolic violence, and will help to spread better ideas too, right? So like it'll help us as individuals update and kind of flush out all of those poor cultural norms that we've been conditioned to believe over our lifetimes. Thunderdude says cultural hierarchies are now shaped less by old institutions and more by algorithms, platform economics, and network-driven popularity. Yeah, that's true. These new systems still influence what is seen as legitimate, desirable, or normal, often in ways that feel natural or merit-based to users. Yeah. Tell me about it, dude. How do you judge quality on YouTube? Or TikTok? How do you judge quality? Engagement, screen time, and what's the other? Click-through rate, right? 3 simple metrics. These 3 metrics equate to value. At least for most people intuitively. Because you're like, okay, well, is this YouTuber or is this content creator valuable? Well, how popular are they? So people see sort of popularity as a sort of, as a key indicator for quality, which is not true. Popularity just is, it's one metric, right? It's not totally useless. Popularity gives us some information, right, about what it is people sort of seem to like. But it's not the same as quality. And, you know, popularity should be only one metric in a kind of a whole suite of different ways of measuring, right, that content, right? Is it scientifically accurate? Is it, you know, is it creative? Is it well polished, right? Is there a lot of good production value in it? Is it honest? There's all these different sort of ways that you could rate this content that are just not, they're not, YouTube platforms don't care about any of that. They care about what captures people's attention, because that's the only metrics that's really necessary in order to sell ads. And ads are the way that the companies make money. So the assigning value is clear and is cut and dry if you're a corporation looking to maximize profits. How do I maximize ad revenue? I promote all the content that captures people's attention best. And it's kind of insidious how they've crowdsourced. They're like, we don't need to actually figure out how to do that, right? Like YouTube, TikTok, they didn't actually do any of the hard work in figuring out how to capture people's attention most effectively. They crowdsourced that to a bunch of users and offered them all, like, dangled little carrots in front of all of them and said, here, look, you could blow up and you could make a bunch of money, right? Here, look at Mr. Beast over here. Or look at some examples of these popular influencers, right? That could be you. And so everyone comes in there and makes a bunch of content, gives it all away for free. That goes into this sort of, you know, evolution, this system of survival of the fittest. And the people that somehow find the magic combination where they can maximize that locking in people's attention, right? Those get rewarded. So they didn't even innovate, really. They just created a space and became a gatekeeper. Now, that to me that's just, it's so problematic, right? And you're right, I don't know that many people really realize how problematic that is. It is just the way that, you know, they've captured this space and made us all, holding us all hostage, taking the lion's share of all the value that is being created by all the crowdsourcing that they're doing, and only, distributing a small fraction of it to a handful of winners that they use as sort of like, it's like a lottery, right? It's like a lottery. Yeah, sure, the odds are against you, but you can't win if you don't play. And so people are like, well, you can't change how social media is, so you either play the game or you don't play the game. Once the internet breaks down and it just becomes unusable because it's riddled with bots and just AI slop, then people are going to be like, all right, how do we rebuild this thing in a better way? And that's what I call the metacortex, right? The universal brain. It's going to be a social network that has transparency at its heart. Popularity is often mistaken for democracy because visibility metrics look like votes. Yeah, that's a good point, Thunder Dude. I would agree with that. Popularity is mistaken for democracy because visibility metrics look like votes. Not only that, but the thing about popularity is people are only watching it because it's popular, right? So it's like this, it's this gravitational force, right? Popularity is like gravity. You got mass. The more mass that you get, the more gravity that you have. The more gravity that you have, the more you suck in other particles, right? And the more massive you become. And so there's this positive feedback loop where if you have crossed some threshold for criticality, then the system snowballs. And so people they're not watching things because they're interested in it. They're watching it because they think other people are interested in it. And so then, you're right, it looks to people like if a video has, 5 million views on it, then has to be something inherently more valuable about that content, and that's just not true at all. Like there are so many value-free videos by Mr. Beast. I'm sorry, Mr. Beast. I don't want to hate on anyone. I'm glad that he's successful, but a lot of the videos that I saw, I'm just like, why is this trending? Why do I live in this Black Mirror episode where this kind of content, it feels like Idiocracy, right? Where it's little better than people sitting in an Easy Boy recliner and watching a reality TV show based on other people kicking each other in the genitals, right? Ow, my balls. And scooping out handfuls of lard in a bucket and eating it with their hands. Like, is that too far? Did I go too far? Your goal in life is to receive $1 million from Mr. Beast? Good luck. Good luck. I am just from your limited, from our limited interaction in chat, I think that you would do way more with that $1 million than Mr. Beast ever could. Because it looks like you have a good handle on some of the major problems in our modern society, and you want to do something to help. And he has just been captured by a system that is, it's predatory. It's sucking the lifeblood out of a large population, sustaining a tiny, tiny sliver of individuals, and then taking the lion's share for, the founders of the company, who are doing what with it? They're funneling that into more R&D, into refining their algorithms and their platforms to be ever more predatory, to squeeze creators at the margins. Yeah, it's a Black Mirror episode, man. We got to escape. How do we escape from the Matrix? We have to have new dreams. We have to share our dreams openly. We cannot hide behind masks. We cannot afford to take the easy road out and say, well, that's someone else's job. Someone will figure that out. We can only do what we can do, though, right? We've all been given a hand. We got to make the most out of it. Just keep that positive thinking going. Keep that can-do attitude. Put one foot in front of the other. Life is like a trek up the Himalayas. Sometimes we get up to a beautiful vista and we can see far into the distance. And sometimes we slip on a boulder and we fall, some ways back down the mountain. Injure a leg, sprain an ankle. Sometimes we just have to sit and nurse that injury for a little while, right? Or sometimes hopefully we're using a buddy system to get up the mountain. We lean on other people to help us, to lift us up and carry us up the mountain a little ways until that injury heals. But there's always a higher peak. There's always a higher peak. There's always a better, beautiful vista. And the problem with the human condition, right, is habituation. We habituate to those local peaks that we scale. And the view, beautiful as it may be, becomes boring to us after a while. And we are constantly looking for some new peak to scale. It's kind of the tragic comic condition of humans is that we will never be satisfied. It's kind of a survival imperative to never be satisfied. Like, I don't think it could be any other way. We have to be driven. We have this deep sort of machine language algorithms, our dopamine reward system that forces us to look for more. It helped us, right? Helped us survive. Evolutionary advantageous. So we just have to figure out how to use our smarts, our learning, right? Our ability to impose sort of top-down cultural values and norms to modify that reward system and redirect it into more positive directions. So it's not totally hopeless. We are kind of bound by this necessary drive to always look for more. But we can direct that to more experiences with people, right? More social experiences, going to more concerts, playing more games with each other. It doesn't necessarily have to be fulfilled by getting more stuff in this consumer society. We just that's where we're stuck right now. But we can redirect, we can get the same kind of rewards, the same kind of dopamine rewards from social interactions. And those are not non-zero-sum games. Like getting material goods, that's a zero-sum game, right? If one person gets the apple pie, the other person, or one person eats all the apple pie, the other person doesn't get any. But social interaction, going to dances, going to concerts, playing music, doing anything creative, artistic, just gathering, playing games, right? All that is non-zero sum interaction, which means we all benefit. And so those are the kind of rewards we want to maximize, because everyone shares in those rewards. And those are just as good, if not, I would argue they're way better than the rewards that we get from, I don't know, getting a new pair of shoes if you don't need them, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with getting new shoes if your old ones are broken up. Roughly a third of the world's population still lacks the internet. Thanks for that fact, Thunder Dude. Yeah, that's a bummer. I mean, or maybe not. Maybe like I said last week on the stream, I was like, or maybe it was just in a private chat, but I made the comment that maybe the world would benefit from like a giant EMP knocking out the world's internet somehow. And we just had a little vacation from the internet. Like, we stopped leaning on this crutch of social media to give us these sort of surrogate but really sort of empty calorie social experiences. So imagine a giant EMP knocks out the internet. What do we do as humans? Can't go online, can't check Facebook, can't check LinkedIn, can't use Discord. What are you going to do? Maybe you'll go knock on your neighbor's door and ask them if they're all right, if they have enough food supplies, or maybe you'll go ask for a cup of sugar, or maybe you'll go take a walk. And what if everyone doesn't have the internet and everyone takes a walk? Maybe people will reconnect with each other on the ground level. I think the problem is that our technology is scaled up way faster than our culture, right? Don't you think so, Thunder Dude? There's just a mismatch in sort of the scaling up of physical technology and cultural technology, cultural memes and norms. In sociology, there's something called cultural lag, where cultural systems, they're slow. They're slow to adopt new sort of ideas, right? We get stuck in this sort of social-wide echo chamber. And this is also called the Overton window. Things that people are willing to accept based on the values that they've been conditioned to believe over their lifetime. So society has this thing called cultural lag that does not similarly affect our ability to innovate, and the free market for innovation and technology does not suffer from a similar trend. It just keeps going faster and faster. So we're in this position where we have this godlike technology, but we have not updated and evolved our cultural values at a rate that is sort of on par or on tandem with these technological innovation. So the technology has become part of our digital landscape. It's become part of our environment. And our cultural norms and memes have not given us the software to be able to navigate that new technological environment. And we're seeing all these negative impacts from it, right? There's this mismatch in our ability to parse the world and the world itself. And it causes us to get confused a lot of the times, right? We see patterns where they don't actually exist. We identify problems, but we don't really understand the scale of those problems, right? Like, how big of a problem is that? And how much should I worry about that rather than this other thing, right? Like, we don't see problems as relative to one another. Thunder Dude says, COVID received sweeping policy action because it directly threatened the powerful and was framed as an immediate global crisis. TB kills millions quietly in places with less agenda, so it remains invisible in policy and media priorities. It's a function of information gatekeeping that define who gets attention and whose suffering is normalized. Yeah, I don't know how... Again, it's hard to... So you got to remember things like COVID policy. It's hard to come up with a neat story to explain why that got more funding. Like, I'm sure what you're saying is partially correct. That's a factor. But, it could also be a consequence of just this the novelty of it, right? News thrives off of novelty and sort of danger. So novelty plus danger is kind of like a viral marketer's wet dream, which that's what the news is, right? They depend on ad revenue. So the news and the media, COVID's like something like Donald Trump, right? There's like some of the popular, like John Oliver, The Daily Show. When the old hosts handed over to John Oliver and retired, people were like, "Are you crazy? Donald Trump just got elected president. That's got to be a satirist's wet dream, right? Because every day you just got some crazy new thing that you can talk about, right? You're never going to run out of content." So I think part of it, the reason that COVID was seen as this huge deal, right, was because it was novel and dangerous and was the kind of thing that naturally spread like wildfire across media platforms, which, got a rapid and powerful response from the public. And all of those are factors too, right? So I don't think that I don't want it, and I don't know if this is what you're saying, but I just want to make sure people are not thinking that we're saying that this is a sort of conspiracy type thing. It's possible, right? It's possible that certain actors had that in mind and it worked out in their favor. But the reason ultimately that it happened in the way that it did might have been less to do with those individual actors pushing in that direction than other sort of larger forces. Just like herd mentality, right? That's a pretty large force. The thing is, TB can be cured and has actually effective vaccines. So I totally agree with the idea that society does not necessarily delegate its resources appropriately, or that we often misallocate resources to the wrong thing, right? Like, we don't have our priorities straight, really. Like, if you think about it, I was watching a podcast and someone said that, if you took like 10% of the military budget that the US, or maybe it was the world governments, if you took like 10% of military budgets, you could basically solve world hunger. It might have even been less than that. It might have been like 2 or 5% of military budgets. So yeah, societies, because they're still kind of archaic institutions, right? They really haven't evolved that much. We like to think that they have, but the decision-making process hasn't changed that much. It's still, there's still a lot of concentrated power. So it's just not an intelligent system that we have. And so because of this, the resources do not get distributed or allocated judiciously. And the real tragedy is that, like, the people in power that are making all these bad decisions would benefit equally, right? If the system was just making better decisions. So the tragedy of it all is that people think that they're making decisions that are good for themselves, when in reality, because of our complexity, blindness, right? That cognitive horizon that I'm talking about, because we don't really understand how things sort of ripple out, and we don't have an alternate model for how governance could happen, really, most of us. We just accept that this is the only way, and if someone has to make a decision, well, I'm glad that it's me. Yeah, the irony and the tragedy is that everyone would benefit if we really got together and had a massive brainstorm and just committed to rebuilding systems in a way that mirrors intelligent systems. Evolution created intelligent systems like the brain. And what we see on a society scale is kind of like, it's still like a budding nervous system that, you know, it's like a paramecium that just has a flagella, and it can go forward or backwards, right? And it can turn from side to side. So it's got like 4 levers. That's kind of how society is right now, I think. It's like it's a nascent nervous system where there's only a few sort of levers that it can pull, and it can steer in certain directions, but it can't do anything more nuanced than that. So we're in the process of evolving better social brains. It's going to take a lot of us to figure out how to do that. It's like the blind men and the elephants, sharing perspectives, being more open to new ideas, not getting locked in, not getting all emotionally bent out of shape when someone uses the wrong word or challenges an idea. It's just going to take time. All right. I'm going to take another quick break. If there's anyone else out there that has anything to add, wants to talk about, wants to tell me a story, let me know. Oh, what's up, clowns? Sorry, song got played on the radio. You're back? Hell yeah, clowns. That's exciting. You got back just in time for another potty break. So give me a minute, and I will BRB, and then we can talk about that. I'll be on Discord if you want to chat for the next 20 minutes. And that'll be the end of the stream. So you can help me bring it on home. I'll be right back, all right? Okay. Thunder Dude says, so I'm back. Welcome back, everyone. We're on our last cup of tea here. So this is the point where we're gonna get wild and wacky. Or maybe, I don't know what I don't know what we'll do. We'll leave that open. Don't know what's gonna happen. Something miraculous could happen, especially when I get clowns on stream. Thunder Dude says you can eradicate malaria by building sanitation structures, yet malaria vaccine got R&D billions. The bragging points for developing the vaccine are more important than dead people. Yeah, I don't know a lot. I don't know about a lot of the details about that, but I know that, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation put a lot of money into developing vaccines and providing maybe different Band-Aids. But I think you're right. We definitely need to look at alternate solutions, because the mosquito problem, I was just watching a video about insect populations and their response to sort of climate change and things like pesticides and monocultures and that kind of stuff. And according to etymologists, we hadn't really studied insect populations for a long time. It's just really hard to, there's so many insects and it's hard to quantify. But there are some specialists that are looking at the question of how do you quantify insect populations. And they've come up with certain ways to try to quantify that, right? And set up a number of traps in an area, and you see how many bugs get collected over time, and you compare that with different periods of time, and you see what the difference is. And they've come up with a pretty kind of astonishing and concerning idea that insect populations are since, I'm not sure when it was. I'm not sure if it was since the Industrial Revolution or if it was just more recently, like the last few decades or so. But they said that insect populations today are declining about 2% per year. Which 2%, that doesn't sound like an alarming number, but if you just think that year after year you're decreasing insect populations by 2%, then that is actually a hugely significant and concerning idea. And the thing is that insect populations aren't declining this in the same way across all species. There's going to be winners and losers, right? And the big winners in these changes that are happening are like mosquitoes, because mosquitoes thrive in warmer environments. So if you're experiencing warmer temperatures rising, the mosquitoes, whether or not it's being caused by human-caused climate change or natural climate change, right? Mosquitoes are going to become even more and more numerous, which means that that's going to be, a bigger problem going forward. So maybe we do need to look at, like you said, sanitation infrastructure as augmenting this problem. Malaria used to be prevalent in Morocco, but it has been eradicated today largely because of widespread access to proper toilets. Yeah, sanitation. Think about in the Middle Ages where they didn't have sewer systems and people just dumped their excrement into the streets, right? And then, or horses would just take dumps in the streets, and you just had excrement all over the place. Those were good conditions for things like, the Black Plague and the bubonic plague to spread. Maybe the bubonic plague was rats. I think the Black Plague was related to sanitation issues. And you can think about it too as conditions of industrial farming, right? Where you have these big feedlots and cows that are really, really in close quarters with one another. when one cow gets infected by something, it's going to spread really, really rapidly, especially when they're, when they're walking around in their own feces. And so sanitation is definitely a big issue if we want to, prevent the spread of deadly diseases. Let's see. Clowns, are you there? Do you want to join me on Discord? Speak of the devil.
I think I need to. We need to save chat. We're talking about feces on your stream.
That's all right.
Come on, man.
Everybody poops.
We might as well talk about my crappy song.
Let's talk about it.
So I did a song called "Little Miss Independent."
Okay.
And it got played on the radio. I sent it to a friend, and it's being spread around. I guess I didn't freaking realize how popular it got. People are downloading it and crap, and they're playing it all over Iowa. I guess it's crazy.
That's awesome.
And my phone's been blowing up.
So it's
my phone started blowing up. Dude, do you know Caleb's on the radio? Dude, do you know your song's on the radio? Dude, I'm shopping in the store and your song's being played. What the hell?
That's crazy. That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Well done. Congratulations.
Dude, it's not even out yet. It's not out for, what, how many hours until the damn thing's out? It might not even be until tomorrow. Let me go look. I'm gonna go look. It's crazy.
So someone that you sent it to has connections to a radio station and got it released early somehow?
Yeah, it'll be live tonight. Yeah, it'll be released tonight. Yeah, I just passed it off to a couple of friends to see what they thought of it, and mostly I've been handing it off to women, and they're loving the hell out of it. It's crazy.
Good. That's awesome. Awesome.
Getting
exposure.
They played it, and they got like a ton of requests for it to be played again, so it's been played like 3 or 4 times in the last 3 hours, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not even out yet. Thank you, I guess. I thought you were just listening to it, not gonna go put it on the air. And she's just like, what do you think I was talking about when I was talking to you earlier?
Oh, like, okay. So you know how it got out then. You know the person. You know the vector of infection.
Yeah, I know the person.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the person. So it's like fucking crazy.
Yeah, we're talking about infectious diseases, so we could think about memes as viruses for the mind, right? So you've successfully spread one. So that's good, man.
Yeah, hey. It's a good message.
It's a good one. It's a good virus to spread, right?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's about the balance between men and women. Bringing chivalry back is what the song's about.
Okay.
And it's kind of nice. It's a nice message that you don't need to be intimidated by an independent woman. You should embrace her and help. I mean, a relationship's about 2 sides, right? And I think this generation's kind of lost it. So the women are listening to this, going, "Oh my God, I love this guy."
I think you're kind of low on stream. Let me try to turn you up. Sorry
Okay.
Oh, that's weird.
Caleb's like freaking out, calling everybody he knows, and he's like, "We're gonna have a party over this," and I'm like, "Dude, it's just a radio. It's just radio. Calm down." He's like, "No, this is where it starts," and I'm like, "Calm down, bud. Calm down." So you see 100,000 on Spotify and 100,000 on SoundCloud and 100,000 on Apple. There's no need to be freaking out. Like, calm down. I've had my stuff on the radio before, so like, it can lead big places, but it can also lead nowhere too. So, like, chill a little bit. So he's all excited about it.
Wait to pop the champagne is what you're saying. Yeah, because you've had enough experience to realize that this could be. It's a good sign for sure, but it doesn't necessarily lead to the things that is like you're really all hoping for, right? So yeah. But
well, I don't care. I'm not hoping for anything out of it. I just want people to listen to my music. He's hoping for money and fame. I already have that, so I don't really care. So
yeah. So this is the first time he's been on the radio. Is that right?
First time, yeah. So he's like massively freaking out.
Oh yeah.
And my friend, she's like, I know this isn't your first time on the radio. This music's too good. And she's like, how many times? And I was like, way too many. And then she looked me up and she goes, holy crap. She goes, yeah, way too many. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, okay, now I see why you're not that excited. But how do you feel about it? And I was like, I feel violated. You didn't ask me. You just said, I want to put it on the air. And I said, well, it's not out yet. And then you just put it on the air. She's like, it's that good. It had to be put on the air. And I was like, all right. So, yeah.
That's cool, man. Violated. You violated me. How dare you?
Yeah, it's probably like 100,000 people have heard it. Like, that's about it. Like, it's not a lot. Like, if it was in LA or something, might be a little bit more. People might go look for it. Like, 1% will go look it up. That's usually the turnaround rate for anything. So, it might get 1% of the views. So, but 1% of 100,000 is still 1,000 people, you know?
Yeah.
But she didn't tell them it hasn't been released yet. So that's kind of, people are going to go looking for it. And
it's not going to be able to find it, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's better to coordinate.
So that's, yeah, real bad.
Well, hopefully,
and I like her.
She'll play it. Hopefully, she'll play it for the next week, and then it won't be, and that while it's out.
It's her new favorite song. It's her favorite song. It'll be played a lot. She already said that.
Oh, that's
She
good.
wants to do an interview with Caleb also.
Cool.
So it's just up north, so we can drive up there and do an interview.
Nice.
So yeah, that song I think is gonna be huge. It's gonna be fucking huge, I think. Women are fucking loving it.
So that's not the one that we played earlier, the funk one, Miss Independent. I know you shared it with me, so I'm pretty sure I've heard it. But you just have so many songs.
I don't know if I shared it with you. If I did, it was yesterday.
I think I saw.
Yeah, I shared it with you yesterday.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's in. Yeah, if you want to play it, you can. It's in your Discord. Yeah, that'd be. Yeah, get the. It's not out, folks. It's not out until tonight at 11 o'clock Central Time. So, but it's a good song. I give it that. But if you want to play it, yeah, let's play it. Get even more exposure. It's nice.
All right, here it is. Miss Independent. Sneak preview, not officially released. It's all the rage in some parts of Iowa, here in the U.S., and now here on The Joy of Thinking. Check it out.
Heels too high for a Tuesday night. You walking slow like you own the light. Tab hits down with a flick of your hand. I see the play, girl, I understand. I'm fine, rolls out like a second nature, but your glance says more than the words you gave it. Nails on fire, you're dressed for the win, and I'm not here to break it, I'm here to fit in. You say don't worry, I just grin back. Two people like us don't need the act. Miss Independent, your style, you stand alone, but you stay a while. We walk the line with our heads held high, but it's nice to have someone on your side. I'm not here to take your crown, just here when you wanna set it down. You don't need saving, we both know, but it's good to have a place to go.
Nice.
You laugh like you're in on the joke with me. Lean back cool, but you still don't leave. Play that calm like a well-worn suit, but your eyes skip beats when I tell the truth. I know that game, I've been the same. Walls stay high just to keep the name, but I've learned sometimes it's a smarter call to let one person see it all. You don't ask, but you don't say no, and I'm not the type to rush what grows. Miss Independent, I get your style, you stand alone, but you stay a while. We walk the line I don't chase, I don't wait, I don't beg for a seat. I'm the one that they meet when the crowd was complete. You don't bend, I don't break, we just move how we move. And the room gets small when we're finding the groove. Two lone wolves in the same moonlight. We don't call it love, we just call it right. I'm not here to fix, I'm not here to mend. I'm here cause I want, not cause I depend. You can stand tall, I can stand too. But it's sweeter when the views fall too. Rules drawn neat like a sharp cut suit. But I've got time if you let me through. Guard still up but your laugh runs free. And that's enough to keep pulling me. Missing deep end, I'll swim that far. Cause the crown's not you, you're brighter by far. Miss Independent, I get your style. You stand alone but you stay a while. We walk that line with our heads held high. But it's nice to have someone on your side. I'm not here to take your crown, just here when you wanna set it down. You don't need saving, we both know. But it's good to have a place to go.
Do some flute.
You're not weak for letting me near. Sometimes strong just means we're clear.
Impressive. Love Caleb's vocals on that, man. Like the vibrato and his range is really good.
Oh yeah, and yeah, that was flute. I was talking
So is that
to another Iowan, and he asked me what my worst instrument was, and it's the flute. And by the way, that flute is not that good. It's actually really shitty. I'm really bad at it.
good for you though, picking it up, man? It
Yeah,
worked in
Delta.
there. It worked. It wasn't a
Well, it worked,
it wasn't a
but
huge
I can hear
feature.
it. Oh hell no! But I kind of put it in just because.
Yeah, it
You
definitely.
kind of mentioned the flute, and it's so bad. It's just so bad.
I like
It's
the
not
flute.
even good.
I like the flute. I didn't have a problem with it at all. So I don't think anyone's gonna criticize your flute playing.
It's so shit. It's so shit. It's so shit.
No one needs to know that. So that's cool. So okay, sorry. Is that so? The beat, the bump, that is that reggaeton? Is that like is that reggaeton beat or is that something else?
It's a 5/9. It's 5/9.
Is that it's? I mean, it's a familiar beat, right? It's used a lot. Is it reggaeton or is it a certain type of genre that uses that beat a lot? Or
Yeah,
just
it's called 5/9. That's what it's called.
oh, okay. So
It's called
just
5/9 beat.
it's just popular in like some Latin music, or what would you say?
No, it's a 5/9 beat. It's a 5 count with 9 offsets. That's what it is.
I know. What I'm asking is isn't there a particular genre that tends to use it quite a bit?
Jazz, funk.
Oh.
It's used all the time. I mean, it's just an accent beat is all it is. When you don't want a 4/4
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want a lot of energy, you usually do 5/9.
Gotcha.
So I mean, it was really it was foundational when it comes to like jazz in the 50s and 60s, and really developed and became part of pop, I guess, in the 70s, and then kind of stuck around through the 80s. It's more used in jazz than anything.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, genres use it all the time, and it's used in every genre, basically. All right, later, Thunder.
See you later, Thunder Dude. Thanks for hanging out today, man. Go take care of the planet. Do what you can. You the man. Come back and see me and tell me
For some reason,
what else you find.
I'm thinking Captain Planet for some reason. I don't know why.
Captain Planet, he's a hero. Gonna take pollution down to 0. Yeah, Thunder Dude. But he's kind of like the Thor Captain Planet, right? He's like...
Yeah, I know. Great. But yeah, it's been kind of crazy day.
The song is definitely a banger. I thought the lyrics were, I thought the message was great, man. To be honest, I thought it was well done. Miss Independent. There was nothing kind of like, it wasn't, there wasn't any like, yeah, I'm gonna say that you're independent, but you know what this is all about, and I'm gonna play that game. And it was like an honest, it was like honestly considering, strong, independent women, and trying to become a part of that, have a good relationship with them, and
Well, I mean, it's about relationships in general. Like, I mean, that's something that like this generation doesn't understand. Is like a relationship is about give and take, and just because she claims she's independent or whatever doesn't mean that she doesn't need somebody.
right.
Everybody needs other people, and it's nice to have that place, that safe person. Um,
Yeah, I liked your.
but so many guys get caught up on that. Oh, she doesn't need me bullshit. It's just like, but she does. It's just not in the way you want her to. And
It doesn't
like
necessarily
that's
conform to a standard like cultural narrative about gender roles or that kind of thing.
right. Well, it actually does. A lot of people don't realize that's kind of the point of the message is that she's still a woman and you're still a man. It, but relationships aren't about the gender roles. It's about what you're doing for each other.
Yeah,
She should be a
yeah,
safe
yeah,
space for you, and you should be a safe space for her.
yeah. Empower each
Right?
other. Right. Yeah, I liked your lyric. You don't need saving. We both know, but it's nice to have some place to go. That was a really good bar there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
liked it.
that's the whole core. That's really the core of the message there.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, too many guys get caught up on that. I need to be everything to this woman, and it you just that's just not healthy. Not in today's society. Women need their own space. So do men.
yeah. That's
And
true.
you need to know your roles. If you don't know your roles, then you're going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I agree.
I think it's a great song.
It is good. I like.
It all came about
Definitely a
because
banger. Yeah. What's the
it came
origin?
about because so I have this friend and she kept saying it's girl power, blah 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 blah, and she's like I'm I'm independent, and I was like, yeah, I know what that means, and she's like, really, explain it to me, and I was like, bet, and I sent it to her, and it's her favorite song. It's her favorite song.
Nice.
She's like totally in love with it.
Good. Yeah, glad that she understood it as well. All right, so I guess I'm about on my last leg. Is there anything else you want to talk about here?
I
Clowns?
know. I'm just talking about the song. That's about it. Yeah, it was it was a good song. And sorry for being in and out of the stream. I just have a lot going on personally, not just the radio stuff and music. I have a lot of personal stuff going on, so just trying to get all that stuff dealt with too.
Yeah, no worries.
So,
Totally understand.
and not totally present, but not totally gone either.
It's the best we can do sometimes. Life in general. Not totally present, but not totally gone. That's kind of, I feel like I'm walking in that superpositional state for about 80%, or maybe more, maybe like 90% of life. I feel like I'm not
Yeah.
totally present, but not totally gone. In this weird place of like dream walking, or not dream walking. What is it called? Sleepwalking. Dream walking. That's a cooler expression, though. Here we go. Here on the Joy of Thinking, dream walking. Combine sleepwalking with daydreaming, and you've got dream walking.
No,
Right?
no. Let the artist let the artist explain it.
Okay.
Reshaping the world around you to be everything that you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's dream walking. Just taking all the negatives and turning them into positive.
Oh, so there's already a term, dream walking, that is already been popularized by some sort of fictional writer or philosopher?
No, that's what we're doing now. No, no,
Or are
no.
we coming up with it? So
We're coming up with it. I think that's a better way to look at it.
I unintentionally came up with the concept just randomly. It was I was thinking of sleepwalking, but I was also thinking of dreaming in this superpositional state, and I accidentally concatenized these two terms, and then you just turned it into a full-fledged philosophy. So thank you. Yeah, I agree. That's perfect. Perfect description.
Yeah, I think that's a better description. Like, you're going through life and you just reimagine everything around you from all the negatives into nothing but positive. It'll make you feel a little bit better and give you a better outlook on life.
Yeah, so the walking component is your feet are on the ground, you're in reality, but your mind is not, it's not fully being determined by what you see. It's partially being determined by what you hope to become and see. So
yeah,
I really like
exactly.
that. Yeah, I really like that. Dream walking. Dude, let's write a song about that. That's fucking awesome. Maybe that could be one of our maybe it can be one of our if we ever get together and make an album, dream walking. I'm going to write that down. It's a cool concept. All right, let's end the stream there on a high note, on a beautiful new philosophical concept. I told you that anything could happen in the joy of thinking. Happy accidents, just like Bob Ross says, but we're doing it instead of using paints, we're using words, hallucinating like ChatGPT, but even better. So let's do a sign off today. Friends, family, fellow travelers, fellow dreamers, we have been gathered here in this beautiful space where we have a little taste of beauty, a little taste of humility. We talked about the expansiveness, the infiniteness of the universe, of biological systems around us, of our inner lives, the interior of our minds, a universe unto ourselves. We are nested universes. We are entangled in the present and the future states. We are rapidly typing out our ideas about dream walking on a keyboard, and we're thinking about this wonderful new philosophy that might come out of it. We're in real time synthesizing all of this language and dreaming up a new way, a new framework to view the world, to bring joy and happiness and peace on earth. Shout out to everyone on this Friday, Saturday to some if you're in Norway. It's been a ride. I'll see you on the other side, fam. Take care, and happy thinking to you.
You want to see the video of it being played on the radio?
I'm going to sign off real quick. I'll be right back in if you want to talk, but I'm gonna play your.
Yeah.
Can I play your song as the closing song on the stream?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Let me shut the hell up.
All right, I will be right back.
Heels too high for a Tuesday night. You walking slow like you own the light. Tab hits down with a flick of your hand. I see the play, girl, I understand. I'm fine, rolls out like a second nature, but your glance says more than the words you gave it. Nails on fire, you're dressed for the win, and I'm not here to break it, I'm here to fit in. You say don't worry, I just grin back. Two people like us don't need the act. Miss Independent, your style, you stand alone, but you stay a while. We walk the line with our heads held high, but it's nice to have someone on your side. I'm not here to take your crown. You laugh like you're in on the joke with me. Lean back cool, but you still don't leave. Play that calm like a well-worn suit, but your eyes skip beats when I tell the truth. I know that game, I've been the same. Walls stay high just to keep the name, but I've learned sometimes it's a smarter call to let one person see it all. You don't ask, but you don't say no, and I'm not the type to rush what grows. Miss Independent, I get your style. You stand alone, but you stay a while. We walk the line with our heads held high, but it's nice to have someone on your side. I'm not here to take your crown, just here when you wanna set it down. You don't need saving, we both know, but it's good to have a place to go. Yeah, I don't chase, I don't wait, I don't beg for a seat. I'm the one that they meet when the crowd was complete. You don't bend, I don't break, we just move how we move. And the room gets small when we're finding the groove. Two lone wolves in the same moonlight. We don't call it love, we just call it right. I'm not here to fix, I'm not here to mend. I'm here cause I want, not cause I depend. You can stand tall, I can stand too, but it's sweeter when the views fall too. Rules draw neat like a sharp